It should not happen.
No,
no,
it's
no,
Gotta be
no,
different, man. Come on.
no way. That's total failure if we go to past 9. Okay, we're good to go. All right. Thank you, Tucker. We'll call the May 9th Board of Finance meeting to order. Amy, could I ask you to do the roll, please?
I would be delighted. Okay. Judy Neville is not here. Tom Schulte.
here.
Okay. I am here. Todd, are you here?
Here. Oh, boy,
Michael Chen,
not here.
Chris Labrie. Victor Alvarez,
Here.
Maria Weingarten. Here. Robert Hamill,
Here.
Colm Dobbin.
Oh,
Oh, do you can
Stop.
go back in?
I think he logged off and so,
I just texted him to come on back.
okay.
James is here.
Yeah.
I'm assuming Colm will be back.
Well, let's have the motion to seat Bob
So moved.
and Bob. Okay, I was going to make fine. Motion to seat Bob and replace to replace Judy.
Second,
Amy, all in favor?
I,
Aye. Maria, you could vote. Yep. Opposed? None. Good,
None.
good evening.
good evening.
and then
And then I would suggest we have was going to have Colm replace Chris, but of course he sort of needs to be here. to do
yeah,
that.
that helps. Mhm.
James for Michael.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
Yep. We'll see James for Michael. A motion? Bob, second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I oppose none. Okay, so moved. And we'll seat Colm if he comes back, I guess. Okay, I don't want to not seat him. No need not to. We do have a couple of votes.
Okay.
Okay, and as a reminder, our full board is 8 people. You're the 9th. You're the tiebreaker.
Correct.
Okay,
Don't-
want to make sure we're clear on that. We had a little confusion last meeting.
Don't have any close votes.
Okay. well, okay,
Solve it.
a motion to approve the April 11th minutes, please.
I have a suggestion.
Okay,
Here.
okay, well, let's do this motion. We'll come back to him.
Okay.
What's
Wait.
your suggestion?
Oh, for the minutes.
This is edits to the
Yeah,
minutes?
edits,
Okay, go ahead.
exactly,
Yeah, go ahead.
exactly.
Okay,
So I got to pull it up. I sent this to
Judy,
no,
oh, Tucker,
Ms. Tucker. And so under H, when we're talking about the movie theater.
Yep.
And the sentence starts, Mr. Mann. I think it should expand to give a greater flavor for the discussion, since it was, not a unanimous vote. And I would suggest along the lines of Mr. Mann summarized all the budget costs, which in total are projected at approximately 8 million, not including the 288,000 already spent to repair the roof. Approximately 6 million of this cost will be realized from town resources, including 600,000 in ARPA funds, 750,000 from the movie theater fund, and 1 million in bonding already provided. Cinema Lab had committed to 1.55 million. We don't know where they're going to come out, period. So the addition, this additional bonding authorization includes a $500,000 contingency and additional 500,000, which may or may not be contributed to Cinema Lab. To date, approximately 2 million has been spent on the project. In addition to the earlier roof repairs, the initial original projections cost was approximately 3.9 million. I know that's a lot, but it was a big item that we talked about. I thought
let's
this
just
is
make
the
sure
rec-
that summarizes the points right. And then I think you could just send that to Tucker for an amended version, because you don't have that, right?
She does. She has a
Okay.
with some edits.
You can listen to it.
Is that right?
It is, except for the fact that 500,000 for Cinema Lab contribution was not decided on that. It was said that number was to be determined.
Right. And
That's
I
correct.
edited that from what I said.
Okay.
per
Okay,
what
so
you
I
said.
just want to make sure that what you offered as an edited, amended version, you've gone and checked to make sure all the facts and figures are correct. Okay, all right.
And did that lead to the 4 million? Did that foot to what we approved? Just looking.
Yes.
It was part of discussion.
I think it was just an add to the discussion.
Yeah, it was just expanding the discussion.
Okay.
Well, it was, expanding it. It was the discussion.
Yeah, so just because this is the record.
Yep,
And,
okay,
people
alright.
could go back to the video, but that's not easy.
Okay, I'm fine with that. If that's what it was, Tucker checked it. Okay. With that, edit and amendment, motion to approve the minutes? I guess we did You edited that. Didn't you approve them? Okay,
Yeah.
motion to approve with those amendments.
Yeah.
Victor, second? Need a second?
James?
Second, James, all in favor? Aye, opposed? None, okay. Okay, just a couple, one,
Should we count?
yes, sorry. Do you notice how he didn't raise his hand either? It was a test and he passed. So Colm, we're reseating you. Yeah, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry, Amy, I came in a little late, so I understand you were making some corrections. Were those provided in writing? Because there was a lot of content there.
Yeah. It's a good question. It is in writing. Tucker has it. Tucker took the written comments and went back to the video to confirm everything.
Okay,
And those edits, now that we have them, can be sent back out to the members. Okay? Tucker, okay, Colm?
I'd like to see them before
Yeah.
voting.
And that's where I got the numbers. I listened to the video first, then Tucker double checked me.
Okay,
I went a motion
for,
to.
wanting to see things in writing
Yeah,
before.
No
before-
worries.
Fair.
Completely understand. We're gonna have a motion to seat you for Chris Labrie.
So moved.
Second. Bob, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Okay. We had you seated for the WPCA, but we obviously, this is a different meeting, so we had to do it.
And I didn't vote this time, you see.
No worries. Okay. Okay, just in terms of our agenda tonight, we've got the first couple items, first selectmen's update, the land acquisition, on ISF discussion. I think Ann's done a nice job. We'll have a good discussion. We are not, I think we'd like to finalize what we'd like to do tonight. But we'll have that conversation, and I've got some figures I'd like to throw out at you. We're going to skip the sewer fee update because we did it. We will have the financial update. We will do the transfers. Where's Andrew Brooks?
He's online.
Okay. Well, that's not optimal.
I'm here.
That's not optimal. We're gonna have a mill rate discussion. I just want to make sure everybody's clear about this. This is a tricky mill rate to set for two reasons. One, the revenue project, as everybody knows, our costs went up, but not terribly. They're up 3 or 3.5%, whatever they were. But was it
314.
3.14? The challenge is our revenues are down, projected to be down year over year, mostly through conveyance fees. And again, that's a tricky one to forecast. And the complexity in this one is that we're not sitting here in early May, 100% sure what our revenues for this fiscal year will be. And we need another month on that. And the reason for that is because we make a calculation on how much we want to draw down the amount from the unassigned general fund that we've applied. So we budgeted 5 million and we'll use less than that. We just don't know how much less than that. It could be $1 million less, it could be 2 million less. But because we don't know where our fees are going to come in, and because that matters a lot, because we are going to have an increase this year, we want to have as many facts as possible on the table to make our decision to keep the mill rate increase as low as possible. And if we were to sit here and guess today, I think we'd guess too high. So I've confirmed that we can finalize the mill rate at our June meeting. We can still get the tax bills out, no problem, by July 1. They're obviously due in before August. And so that's the reason that we're doing it in that process, in that step. Also, we have to decide how much of the general fund we want to use for this year's budget. And again, until we know what we're going to use for next year's budget, until we know what we're going to use for this year's budget, it's a very tricky, we're in a very tricky window here to pick a number and to think about that drawdown. I do have a bold suggestion on how to replenish the fund a little bit to help offset our potential tax increase, and we'll get to that. So that's a teaser. But that's why we're having this pre-discussion today. We don't normally do that, but there are too many moving pieces to really lock down a good number. And like I said, we want to get it right, we want to get it accurate, and we want to get as low as possible. And so we'd rather push it out a couple more weeks until we'll have some more certainty on some of the figures, which should all improve. We just don't know what they'll be. Okay.
When you think of it from a policy standpoint, if we can generally set it as close to the end of the year,
Exactly.
it makes sense.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I know.
There's no particular reason we should be setting it in April when we have
Yeah.
I mean, I know it makes it more difficult for the people getting the tax bills out, but
Couple weeks. Yeah, it's okay.
But-
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. And I agree with you. I mean,
It
thinking
makes
about
sense.
it, we've not had it so close and we've been in such good shape, but with revenues down, conveyance fees and other things, it'll put a little stress in the system. So again, rather be right and do it later. And I think you're absolutely right. We'll have better facts anyway. Okay. With that, turn it over to you.
Good to see you all. I hate to mention it, but the COVID emergency ends on Thursday, federal and state.
Oh, knock on wood somewhere. Jesus.
Well, but we do have the Indian variant, came around town
Mm.
quite a bit last week, and people are not getting very sick, but they're getting sick. As some people know. The vaccination that is the new current variant vaccination is available for those over 65 at by appointment at Vine Cottage. So just want to mention that. Capital projects, Waveney bathrooms. I was overlooking at the other day. They're coming along. Fortunately, the Alden Bailey crew that would be working on the Playhouse are working now to complete the bathrooms. They should be complete in mid-June. The Lapham CHP unit is sitting there installed and waiting for gas to be brought in by Eversource into the park, which hopefully, I see Tiger's gone, but hopefully will occur the next month or so. The PD renovation, as Amy and others on the serving on the building committee know, is moving along as far as the main project, the 39 Locust renovation for the police is being prepared. And then we had our monthly meeting yesterday on 220 Elm. The Board of Ed space is on schedule to be completed for move-in in August by both the administration and the two education programs there. And then the Playhouse, we had a very good hands-on meeting today. As you know, the town council suggested that we hire a project manager, and we decided to hire Hobbs Inc. Among three choices. We had a meeting today with Hobbs Inc. and all the contractors and architects and engineers. And so we didn't have Cinema Lab. We will have another meeting soon with Cinema Lab there as well. But so that was a very good meeting. I think the Hobbs, they want to focus in particular on the HVAC system and understanding why it's expensive, but necessary. And then finally, I'll just mention that Tiger gave a presentation to the Board of Selectmen and the town council recently about the DOG ADA investigation, which is coming to a good resolution for the town. And I won't say more about that now, but it's glad to, if you wanted that presentation, you can have it in executive session,
Okay.
but we should sign the settlement agreement by the time of your next meeting.
Okay.
Chris Schiffer will explain more about the land trust purchase of the 1124 Valley Road house and the expected request for contribution from the town for the additional 1 acre of open space. And I'll participate with Chris when we get to that item. We're very happy that I may have mentioned that last month. They finalizing your purchase and sale agreement for perhaps a September close. And finally, the NUCUA program. Those who attended the Community Foundation's luncheon last week, amazingly, they raised literally $350,000 because they had $200,000 pledges from 3 families. This is for their behavioral health program, part of which will support NUCUA. So we know we have NUCUA well funded for the second year, but they literally raised $125,000 in 20 minutes, and then they had the $200,000 matching pledges. So they're well on their way to raising a $500,000 behavioral health fund, and we still don't have Darien or Wilton joining us, but we do have the town of Weston, as I may have mentioned before. So, but we're well funded for the second year. So
NUCUA, can remind me what that is?
the urgent assessment program at Silver Hill Hospital,
Oh, right.
which is up to like 95 people they've seen, and very people, especially the schools, are thrilled with the program.
Police department building, should we get an update on that in June? or
June,
July?
planning on June,
June,
because
okay.
they have a bunch of, it will be much tighter in the
Yeah.
numbers at that point, and also a number of the administrative things they've had to get approved will be done by then, so it'll be a very thorough presentation.
And just to say, we're going to have our June meeting here. Our July meeting will be there at the library. So they'll just have that in your back of your mind.
I have a question. Kevin, with the Playhouse, would there be the ability for us to get kind of like a monthly update of where we are? You know, I mean, so you've got now a construction manager on top so that, you know, you could present to us, okay, so this is our schedule. This is where we think we are. This is how we are and these costs and, you know, as it gets tighter and tighter that, you know, we often get this, you'll see it with a construction project. There's a plan and then you get kind of an update of where we are.
Sure.
That would be versus, you know, I mean, you had the meetings.
Well,
you
Tiger,
talked to
Tiger's the best one to do that with Bill Olsman. And he can do that at your next meeting.
Yeah, I think,
Certainly
I
the-
think in general, given this project, I think it would be great to get a monthly update where it is,
The expectation is that they're going to reduce the cost, not exceed the cost that's already been authorized, as you mentioned. So,
which is always great. Yeah.
well, that's,
Yeah.
you know, that's the expectation.
And could I ask you about one other?
Wait, so if we want to put that on an agenda for June, that's fine. Just do a
Yeah.
Playhouse, just get as a matter of course, just do that over the next few months.
But with some numbers.
And by the way,
Not
the
just it's
Hob-
going great,
The
but like,
The Hobbs
this is
firm is
where we're
willing to
supposed to be.
come to the boards and present directly. So
perfect,
Yeah.
perfect. And could I ask you, what's going on with the Grove Street, the house that we bought? Are we keeping that? Is it renting it? Are we taking it down? What's the game plan?
you know, like all real estate negotiations that are going on, I really don't want to talk about it. I'd be happy to talk
We
about.
bought it, right?
We bought that.
Yeah.
But there's other discussions going on.
But we bought it and we approved X amount of money for renovations. Has any of that been spent? What's,
No,
what's going?
we haven't done a thing because we really realize there's a larger picture perhaps. And if that comes together, we'll discuss that. There's one party that is, anyway, I really don't want to discuss it
So, but,
because there's part of that is a real estate negotiation and we,
so
I'm
what
happy-
what you're saying is that we bought it. We allocated some money for renovation, but we're not going to use it at the time, at this
Correct,
time,
right.
and we own it. So there's,
And do we have a tenant in there right now?
No.
No, so it's vacant.
Vacant.
Okay, but
you're
so,
doing something else.
yes.
but we bought it with the idea that it would give us potentially an access.
Well, this is a temporary pause because there's other things that are possible there. That
Bit of
I'd
a
be happy to
defensive
discuss it
buy
with the
too.
chairman.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm happy to talk about it. with you.
Playing
Yeah, I don't know. I'm happy to. Okay, other questions? Colm and Maria are online, just so you know. Okay, next item is the update on the funding options for the land acquisition fund. I think, Chris, and if you, are you gonna speak as well? You can speak from here. Yeah.
I'll speak from
Okay.
here. Yeah.
Hey, Chris. How are you? Good.
Gonna share my screen.
Remind you, Chris is the chairman of the Conservation Commission. As well as a director still of the Land Trust.
Thank you for inviting me to speak. Just to level set, I don't know some of you, or some of you don't know me. My name is Chris Shipper. My wife and I are 20-year plus residents of New Canaan. We live in a antique house at the top of Ferris Hill. With regards to the town of New Canaan, I'm currently chairman of the Conservation Commission. I'm a founding board member of the Waveney Park Conservancy. I'm a past president of the New Canaan Land Trust. I'm a board member of the Community Foundation. And this evening, I'm here to speak to you as Conservation Commission Chair, who is also ex officio a member of the Land Trust Board. And it's in that regard that I want to speak to you regarding the potential disbursement of land acquisition funds that are currently at hand. And secondly, a brief discussion about financing the land acquisition fund.
Chris, could you pull the mic a little closer to you?
Does that work? Yeah. Thank you. I'm here because yesterday evening, the Land Trust Board authorized the president, Tom Cronin, to enter into a purchase and sale agreement for a parcel of land up in the northern part of our town. That parcel of land contains this property, which you may or may not be familiar with. It's the group's house. It's a 4-acre lot owned by the First Taxing District. And the house has a long history here in New Canaan of being threatened to be demolished, threatened to save. There have been a series of talks that have gone back and forth. And most recently, there has been a change in the leadership at the first water department and a desire to resolve their problem regarding this historic house. They're a water company, not a housing management organization. And with the help of the first selectman and others, the first water department has offered a bargain sale of this property, not the entire property, but a part of the property. This property was threatened with demolition back in 2018, and a group of preservationists, and this includes Historical Society, Preservation Connecticut, Preservation Alliance, Land Trust, town councilors, and more, stepped up to save it so that the water department said, okay, we won't demolish it. The next effort they looked at is, can we move the house somewhere? And they realized that moving the house is not possible either. So they eventually moved into this direction. This is a simple map. It shows the group's reservoir. That kind of downward pointing arrow is the water company lands around the reservoir. And you can see the where 1124 is pointing, that's the 4-acre lot. It adjoins an 11-acre land trust property. So it's always interesting when you're looking at real estate deals to find adjacencies, and this is a good example of it. The deal is primarily to convert this 4-acre lot and house into to subdivide it to create a parcel B and a parcel A. And it is essentially parcel B, the land that is being acquired by the land trust. The house is essentially a gift, if you look at it. And if any of you own or have owned an antique, generally speaking, it's a gift horse.
It's
You
the
look
gift
it
that
in the
keeps
mouth.
giving.
It's a gift that keeps asking. That's for sure. So, given that the house was first threatened to be demolished, then decided to be moved, in the end, they said, well, the house doesn't have the value, the land has the value. So the land trust is now has agreed to acquire this property. And what is very beneficial is that at the top of that frame, at the top of the survey, that is the land trust property. So it creates a green link right into the land trust property, which takes people off of Valley Road, which is pretty narrow at that one area. So it enhances the experience. Because it's not completed, and because that the land trust is going to go into a capital campaign, which will be in a quiet period, I'm not going to reveal the details in public, but I am sharing with you that the property, as valued by Zillow, one of many different valuation forms, currently puts it as a house on 4 acres at about close to $2 million. The land trust will be acquiring the land and taking on taking on the preservation and long-term care of the house for significantly less than that. It will be for sure a bargain purchase by any standard, by any measure of public recognition. So as a result of that, the Conservation Commission, which is the open space body, and the body responsible for tracking possible additions to open space, requests a disbursement from the Land Acquisition Fund to support the New Canaan Land Trust acquisition of parcel B at 1124 Valley Road, which is the adjoining 1.9 acres to the 10.8 acre Brown Preserve with the historic Groups House, which is a registered New Canaan landmark. The request is for $150,000 of the Land Acquisition Fund.
Which has to start with the Board of Selectmen and then come to the Board of Finance and then to the Town Council is the process set up by the Land Acquisition
Did you approve this?
Ordinance.
Did the Board of Selectmen approve it?
No, we haven't. No,
No.
He's mentioning this tonight because it relates to the bond authorization that.
I think we are updating you on this process so you know where it stands and relates to it.
What's the balance in the acquisition fund right now? How much do we have in the, what?
Today.
I thought we have three years of 50, that's 150.
Yeah, that seems, well,
Well, do we have 50 in this year's budget?
Yes,
That's why.
but
Yeah, so then you have it.
You have 150. You have 100 and when we pass the budget in June, you'll have 150.
Yeah. well, no.
we have to, I think that leads to this discussion.
Well, before you go there, what will the house be used for? What will it be?
Thank you for asking that. The house will become a headquarters for the land trust. In other words, they will be,
Okay.
because it adjoins an 11-acre property, it will become the headquarters for the land trust. But even more importantly, or just as importantly, it will become a residence for the executive director of the land trust.
Which you've had now for 3 years.
We've had an
4
executive
years?
director for 5 years,
years.
and it's probably no different than the executive director of the Nature Center lives on the Nature Center campus. The golf course superintendent lives on the country club campus. Pastors live in vestries on church campuses. Schools have residences for their teachers. The land trust seeks a qualified executive director, but really wants to have its executive director live on campus, is how I would put it. And with almost 400 acres to steward, you need that local presence. Commuting is a little tough, particularly in a world where you have to raise money on weekends and evenings and what have you. So it's multi-use, and we recognize that the subdivision will have to be approved by planning and zoning. The most likely close won't be until September, depending on how the P&Z schedules work out. But it is it's an adaptive reuse of a historical property, and one that will, stand the test of time, as the land trust will, because the property runs forever.
We're not approving that today.
On your agenda is the $100,000.
Yeah, that's different. Just want to make sure everybody understands. We're not
Right.
approving
You're not approving that.
$150,000
Correct.
today.
That is what you're going to get.
It
I
has-
get that.
That may be, that's coming down to at a future meeting.
Or whatever the Board of Selectmen approves.
Oh,
whatever
yeah,
the Board
fair
of
enough.
Selectmen
Yeah,
It
there
has
you
to be approved first by the Board of
Yeah.
Selectmen.
So let me move on to the second part of this, which is the land acquisition fund was created by the town council through resolution in 2017. In 5 years' time, we've only managed to accumulate $150,000 for land acquisitions. Now, that may seem like a lot of money, but it's not in the town of New Canaan. And I bring this to your attention because I believe the Conservation Commission and the Board of Finance have a common vision about the town of New Canaan. The Conservation Commission is in the land appreciation business. The Board of Finance is in the land appreciation business. If you look at your grand list, over 2/3, almost 70% of the grand list value is land. So everything we do that the Board of Finance does that looks at potentially improving or enhancing the value of land and being a player when land transactions come up is an important role. I view it almost like a company that is in the open market and doesn't enter into any share repurchase agreements or share buybacks when the opportunities present themselves, particularly strategic ones, adjoining properties and what have you. So I bring this up because
Can I ask a question? And this, I should know this, but I don't. So all the land trust land around town, which is fabulous, is that on the tax rolls or is it nonprofit? So off the
Off
tax
the
roll?
tax rolls. It all-
Right. So we're acquiring land, which then would come off the tax roll and enhance the community, but it's going to come off the tax rolls.
Correct.
yes, but
Yeah,
yes,
It all reverts to the town should the land trust ever go out of business.
Sure, sure. But I'm just saying in terms of,
I take your point, and I get that often, that if you preserve open space, you take property off the tax rolls. But most often, the preservation of open space is open space. It's not generally developed open space. So it's generally carried on the books at a very low level. And in particular, if it's a water company property, it's carried on the books for nothing. They're all getting they're municipal corporations or public corporations. They're not paying taxes on it anyway. And the other side of that has always been in my mind that it is nice to get a property developed. And you say, well, now we're going to get the revenues, but you also get the costs. There's a service provision for those properties. And what we've observed is, and if you look at it carefully, there's more value in properties adjoining land trust properties. The so-called proximity rule enhances the value of adjoining properties without adding costs. That's a win. It's a little bit like the Central Park concept. The properties closest to Central Park have enhanced value, and then 1 block away, 2 blocks away, 5 blocks away, but Central Park creates tremendous value. Just like in the center of town, Mead Park and Bristow Park create value for all those neighborhoods. It's important. And frankly, we're in a world of COVID, so that these open spaces are even more valuable or even more greatly appreciated than they were. In any event, let me push forward, because you have a full agenda and I want to just quickly get to this point. So this is the creation of a land acquisition fund is enabled by a Connecticut statute. In 2017, the town council, led by Mr. Moynihan, our first selectman, put on a resolution to create a special fund for the acquisition of parcels of property to expand the inventory of dedicated open space. There were many questions raised, and the one item that was changed from the statute was to say the annual contribution to the land acquisition fund is not to exceed 1/2 mil. You know how much a 1/2 mil is per year? 4 million, 8 million, something like that. What is 1 mil? On a 18 mil on 150, say, or whatever it is. I mean, the number that is allowed is enormous. The fact that we've only accumulated 150 is from a conservation standpoint. And believe me, I understand you guys have to make a lot of trade-offs. I'm here on the side of conservation. I think that there is a solution to it. And I think it is an allocation of a percentage or of basis points of the real estate sales conveyance fee. So have any of you sold a property in New Canaan in the last 10 years or 20 years?
20.
20, you did. Did you recognize on your closing statement that you paid $2.5 per thousand to the town of New Canaan in a conveyance fee?
It's more if it's more valuable.
So 2.5
20 years ago.
dollars, and then
We always look at that conveyance.
and then you paid $10 per thousand to the state of Connecticut. The conveyance fee is 100 basis points for the state, 25 basis points. Well, the fact that the town can actually charge 25 basis point conveyance fee is because it was to replace what was a federal stamp tax back in '67. It was going to come off the books. And the state legislator said, well, we'll let the towns pick up that, and they can use those funds as they see fit. But the legislative record said that, and this was Representative Lowell Weicker, said is that the tax would enable municipalities to have additional funds for whatever they see fit, which is where New Canaan uses those funds. But the record went on to say that all hoped that they would use the revenue to acquire open space. The problem of gaining land now so that we have it in areas of open space and recreation is probably the most pressing problem in the state, maybe slightly exaggerated. But with these funds in hand, it seems to me it offers a golden opportunity for communities themselves to plow this back into the land for future generations. It's a pay it forward opportunity. So that was the legislative intent. And here's an example of what I just paid. So I paid 2.5 per thousand on a transaction. I bought and sold in New Canaan. I downsized, I would say.
Could you do that about 6 more times between now and the end of June? To get our conveyance fees.
I think that if we can, if people love living here, they'll try to stay here as opposed to move elsewhere.
True.
So I paid 2.5 per thousand. So I sent a check to the town of New Canaan for $3,062.50. My simple observation is, why didn't you take 10 basis points of that 25 and put it into the land acquisition fund? I would have written you a check for $1,225 when I sold my house. And when people leave the town of New Canaan and sell out, they will be sending you a check, which is a way to say, thank you for all the work you've done on open space. And here's my contribution to the future of open space. So with that single statement, my proposal is, and this is very straightforward because it goes up and down as the economy goes up and down, right? It's just a percentage of a percentage. 10 basis points on transactions would be a recurring mechanism to fund or to finance the land acquisition fund. And I would say, I'm very conservative. I had 4 children, and when they were born, I started college education funds. I knew that 20 years out, 25 years out, they'd go to college or go to graduate school. So every year I put money away. And I took a risk. They might not go to college. They might not go to graduate school. But then I took the risk of, well, maybe I'll have grandchildren who will. The funds will still be there and they will accrete. So as a conservative person, I don't really believe that this should be done through the mill rate. And I don't really believe it should be done through bonding. But I do believe it should be done through an allocation of the conveyance fee. And I feel that if the funds got large, they would be held within the general fund. They would be accumulated. They would simply say, these are the general funds. It's made up of these components and shows you where we are. And if there was a fantastically large acquisition, now an example, Darien trying to raise $85 million to buy acreage right now, that's a classic bonding case. But for transactions in a town of New Canaan where there's only 4% of available open space still in play, you need to have funds available. No one is going to go into a deal with no money in the bank, to say it. And I'll just throw my last point out, which is I believe the land acquisition fund is very leverageable. I believe that when the town spends $1, it will get $4 more of value. It'll get it through either state support, which supports funding, private support, and also through bargain purchase or bargain sale. But the fact that the town does not step up or step into potential land acquisitions, whether it's a property adjoining an existing park or a property that could become a water company, that is a water company property that they decide to peel off and sell, puts us in a awkward position. So I raised this point again. I said, we're all in the land appreciation business. Being a player for land deals will enhance you, because I can tell you, I've been with the Land Trust Board for over 10 years. I've completed over 85 acres of transactions. For every opportunity I have, there are 25 developers willing to step in, and there are 25 real estate brokers looking for a sale, looking for a full price sale, as opposed to a preservation opportunity. So you need to play. It's not easy to be there just at the back end of things. So I bring this up as a discussion point, and I appreciate you giving me the chance to say so.
Thank you.
Your Conservation Commission has supported this?
The Conservation Commission has supported, in fact, supported the resolution which you brought forward in 2017. It's in the Plan of Conservation and Development. It will be in the 2024 Plan of Conservation and Development as a potentially useful mechanism to accumulate funds to put you in a position to play and be a player when an open space shows up in New Canaan.
Okay, I just want to ask a clarifying question. So maybe Josh, you can answer this. What was the number of basis points that we pay on a sale? 25.
25.
So you're asking for 40% of it?
I'm asking for 10 points of it,
Yeah, so 40% of it.
40% of it,
Yeah.
correct.
Okay,
10
but
basis
that's on us. We're going to get a conveyance income of just call it 2 million.
Or $1 million. It runs $1 million to $2 million.
No, I know exactly what it is. It's going to be 2 million this year, maybe a little bit more. 'Cause it was 2.8 last year. You want $1 million of that? You want almost half of that?
I'm going to start there.
Yeah, that's a non-starter, Chris. I'm sorry. I mean, that's just,
I hear you. Well,
that's just a revenue stream that, where do you think we'll make that up? It's got to come from the mill
I
rate.
understand. I understand. I think the citizenship would be very interested to know how this plays out. But the question you ask yourself is, so why do you have that anyway? If it's there,
Why do we have
it's not
what?
being,
Why do we have what?
The conveyance fee is, if it's not being applied as legislatively intended, I understand it's revenue, and I get this point. You don't want to give it up, but I'm sitting here looking at this saying the big property deals are going to be these 100-acre parcels eventually when water companies slowly merge or integrate or combine themselves, and we won't be in a position to do that.
But what would one of those acquisitions cost roughly? Maybe ballpark a range.
Ballpark figure, 100-acre parcel, probably 15 million.
So that's 7 years, 8 more. If you're talking $1 million, about 10 or 15 years of gathering $1 million and change a year.
Right. Not gathering, saving, conserving.
Well, you're not
I get your
spending it.
point.
Yeah,
I
I
get your
mean,
point.
that's a not an insignificant amount of revenue
It is a very significant. amount of
to put in a fund that where we have a fund of sitting with $20 million today. So
I think it is, but when you put it against the fact that the grand list has $6 billion of land in it.
I know, but I hear you, but it's not revenue for, great, I get that, but it's
So
not.
it does make our 50,000 a year contribution to the land fund look rather paltry.
Yeah.
considering.
Well,
Well, I guess-
I'm all for acquisition. Look, I'm a conservationist. I love to, for sure, acquire land. I think when
I
you
guess
call-
I would have thought that the 50,000 a year or whatever was so that you could very quickly go out, hire professionals, be legitimate, do the studies, you draw up, option agreements or whatever, so that you could move quickly. I didn't, maybe I just don't understand why it is that you need to be standing there with bags of money. Otherwise, you're not in the game.
So I think that there's a balance to this, which is the town, unless it was directly adjacent to a park. I'll give you a good example. The little house on the corner of Mill Pond and 106 that went for $500,000 could have been bought by the town outright for $500,000, but there was no funding to do it. There was
But
no
that's not
impetus.
true.
Pardon.
That's not true.
I hear you. You say that.
Where's the funding for Grove Street?
Just not open space.
Where's the funding for Irwin Park? I mean,
No, no, that's-
when those things come along, we can move. We've got plenty of money in the bank, and
I
when the
understand
opportunity
that.
presents itself, if the
But
board
who
feels.
are you asking to move on that?
Whoever the selectman has a proposal that comes to the board votes on it, we can move pretty fast.
Where I get confused is I appreciate that the Board of Finance has to manage finance at a very high level. I'm sitting here as chair of the Conservation Commission saying I have no vig to walk into a meeting with someone to say, hey, let me see if I can run this through the town and take 12
Yeah.
months to get agreement and run into 2 objections or 3 objections in the Board of Finance and tell a seller, hold on, no, I think I can bring them around. I think I can bring them
Well,
around.
I don't think you have, even if you had a fund with $2 million in it, I don't think you can just go spend it.
Oh, I wouldn't. And it wouldn't work that way.
Well,
But
so
it
what's
would
the
give
difference?
somebody, it would give you the
Well,
ability to negotiate and in a serious manner.
But, I will say, I understand your thought process. So there's a consistent commitment to setting some money aside versus all of us going, that line item, we're going to take it out, which we do. But remember, it was a couple years ago that we came out of pocket very quickly for a match. And I think it was a property over in the Silver Mine area.
The
we
town of
did,
New
right?
Canaan, after, I would say I did those meetings. I would say it was something like 16 different meetings to get $250,000 towards a $1.25 million spend. I wrote one grant and the state sent $565,000. It's not a process that you're going to find people walking through. You don't give them anything to go with. You say, go out there and bust your ass and maybe we'll say yes.
Maybe
Who's
I don't
gonna
understand
start
how-
that role?
Maybe I don't understand how the fund works. 3 years, we've taken $1 million out of conveyance fees. We had to raise the mill rate to pay for it. Fine. We have $3 million in the bank. An opportunity comes along. What happens?
So it gets presented. It is there. Possibly we have a scan of all the possible properties that are available and it gets presented to the Board of Finance. But what is always going to be in the back of the mind is the fact that the town doesn't buy the whole thing. The town contributes towards it. That attracts state dollars towards the deal. That attracts private money towards the deal, and that makes the deal happen. You're a partial funding mechanism, not a total funding mechanism.
I'm just saying, how does it
And-
work?
and
If-
let me
if-
ask
regardless of
this.
that, so you would come to the selectmen.
We'd
You
go
would
through
to
the-
selectmen
would
first,
probably
right?
Through the select.
You have to, selectman has to start it, just like a
So just
special
like this,
appropriation.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
You start it, it goes to you, they debate it, they agree, they don't agree.
Mhm. And it
So
comes
there's
to the
no-
Board of
no-
Finance.
And then it comes to us, we agree, we don't agree.
Well, and that's the interesting point, which is it's the funds, what always happens is you agree or don't agree because the funds aren't there. If the funds are there, the partial agreement is in place because you agreed it previously. You've accumulated the funds for the purpose of acquiring open space. It's not now I have to appropriate funds. It's I've accumulated the funds. Now I have to decide, do I disperse the funds?
But isn't that,
That's a difference.
isn't that the same 16 meetings and nobody's going to want to sit around and wait?
I don't know. I don't know if it is. the
That's where I
same.
was
It
at,
seems to me it isn't the same because I'm still doing this.
But-
I'm still coming here every time.
But this
say,
is,
where do we
this is
wanna go?
exactly why if there's 150 in the account, you use it. for this current acquisition.
Well,
In the
that-
same,
that,
right? I mean,
that's
right?
possible. That's possible that there will be this eye of, oh, the money's available, let's spend it.
No,
I
no, you
suspect-
have something to spend it on
I
something
would,
great.
I would say this. I've been around corporations. I understand how a general fund works, and I understand how controllers have a certain amount of balance that they can move up and down. To me, this seems as just part of the general fund, but with the purpose of preserving open space, with that purpose. In a town that has a 21% goal for open space and only has 14% of open space, just like we have a fund, special purpose fund for affordable housing. I did a construction project. I paid 220 basis points in fees, 100 basis points for a building permit, 100 basis points for the P and Z, special allocation for affordable housing, and then another 20 basis points in assorted fees for health and what have you. I just wrote another check that goes towards that. So we already have mechanisms that put things in, and this is coming out of the entrance and exits of our town.
I have a suggested alternative, but I have a
Please.
question.
Hey, Chris, I'm sorry, I wanted to ask.
Go ahead,
a
Cole.
question. What other towns, what are other towns doing? Do they have higher amounts and do they have dedicated funds? Tell us some anecdotes of other places.
Right. I think a very good example right now is Fairfield. It has a land acquisition fund. It has a land acquisition committee. It absorbs, or it is willing to take 10% of excess budget surplus to put it into the land acquisition fund. It takes funds from developers who want to subdivide but can't set aside 10%, and they have to make a contribution in lieu of set aside. There are numerous mechanisms out there.
I think
It just seems to me that this is one of the
Westport's
attractive ones.
I think Westport has a $3.5 million.
West
Fund balance right now.
funds, the town of Greenwich just set up a fund. And they acquired a 47-acre parcel from the water company for like $3-4 million. It's possible, but only if you're a player. So I don't want to, I think we've kind of got to a good point here, and I think it's something to discuss. I don't believe that I would bond $100,000 against some future event. I would say if it's a specific deal, and I would say this, which is the land acquisition fund is there, but we won't use it for this purpose. We're going to bond to acquire this property, and then we release the funds. You can play any number of mechanisms in this structure. I simply see this as a way to do it. And you should be aware that the state is constantly looking at a buyer conveyance fee to be allocated towards open space, but this is one that's in place already. So, I mean, it's just one side or the other of where to go. So I make this suggestion. I agree, Todd. I think 10 is a reach, but I've learned to bid.
You gotta come in with something. No downside to that, Chris. We respect you for that.
Bid one more than I think
We
I can
respect you
make,
for that.
and then we can get there. But I wanted to bring this idea forward, if only to say,
Totally fair. Totally fair.
we need to accumulate, we need to be conservative, and I believe in saving for the future and
Want to
investing.
hear my suggestion?
Pardon me?
Want to hear my suggestion?
Yes.
Okay, but I have a question. Is the conveyance fee tax set by the state? The 25%?
Yes.
No, is that number set by the state?
25 basis points, yes.
Okay,
That's it.
Yeah.
The other portion is authorized for the town to assess. If-
I know, but we can't change
Can we change the 25?
25 to
basis
26.
I don't know.
I don't believe,
I don't know. Just nobody knows, so we should find
Yeah.
out. But that wasn't my idea. It might be my idea, but we'll come back to that.
Could you
I
do
would
more
say-
research and show us
say-
what other towns are doing? So, we understand.
I would say run the numbers and see what accumulates and what's affordable. But I would say, and again, we have all the reports of open space and town residents saying we would support more open space in these days for sure. I think that a conveyance fee mechanism is a pretty attractive one, and one that you could use maybe even only to calibrate to see what should we put into the land acquisition fund. But I think it's something there that moves with the market, so that when in up markets, it's a little extra, and down markets, it's less. Makes sense. You could even put a threshold to say it would be above a certain amount would go this way or what have you. But give it a look, see what you think. But for sure, if you're looking for land deals, and you've accumulated $50,000 a year over 5 years or whatever the number is, there's not a lot of land deals that you're going to be getting involved in.
I think I agree with you on having a bond and putting money aside and going more for that. But you want to hear my suggestion?
I
Okay.
love suggestions.
You're gonna hear it anyway, so.
Why wouldn't we consider we're gonna have, pick a number, $20 million in our unassigned general fund, forget all the other assignments,
Mhm.
right? By the end of the year, more or less, plus or minus 20 million bucks. Why wouldn't we have a policy of assigning $100,000 a year from that fund? Doesn't cost, there's no tax. We're earning interest on it. And just assign it out of the general fund every year as a matter of discipline. And in 10 years, it's $1 million, but maybe we assign more or less, whatever the case may be, but do it that way from a already large unassigned amount of money versus taking revenue away, which I don't think you really meant.
Yeah.
No, I've
To that degree.
also said, we said every year, we set our collections at 98.5%. Why not say if it gets to 99, we'll take one, 10 basis points, we do a number of things here.
In a world of real interest rates too, I mean, we're collecting a lot of interest on balances as well. I mean, not that we're gonna.
Exactly.
invade that.
Exactly. That's
got lots of-
making up for other things, but yeah.
The plea is more funding for the land
that's
acquisition
in a good
fund, more
plea.
financing of
Yeah.
it.
You like my idea?
Mechanisms are really your.
Doesn't
your-
impact the amount to be raised by taxation,
Exactly.
right? Which is
Exactly.
what we're trying to do.
Exactly.
Because the revenue side and all, that's all kind of fun.
But this
Well, no,
particular.
Yes, it is.
no, it's, you have borrowing money for it.
request, let's get back to this. Where does it stand and when will we see it for the 150?
Well, you do have a resolution that you deferred last month for the $100,000 because quite honestly, we anticipated we were going to be having this transaction and using up most of the balance. So it's good to have some there because, if we have to do quickly some legal work or surveying work or in preparation for a deal, otherwise you kind of have to start with square one with nothing in your pocket at all. So.
Guys, thank you so much.
Wait,
for
I'm
what
not
you
sure we're
do.
done here. Thank you for bringing it, by the way.
Yeah.
No,
I appreciate it.
we spend 12 months trying to figure out how not to spend money. So you're hitting us right when we're trying to spend the least amount of money.
I tried to hit you at a
But-
weak moment.
No, you hit us the other way. October is a good time. But can I just ask, how do we want to move on this? Because I'm not sure we want to move on the $100,000. We
Well-
have 100, we're going to get another 50. We'll be able to cover the request which you have for the other, for the building.
Well,
Yeah, so, we will. Okay,
July 1st, we'll have 200.
so I'm not sure we want to just make up $100,000 bond for,
How are we going to have,
Yeah, I thought we were.
We already have 100 in fund balance, we 23, and we have another 50.
only if we pass this, that we didn't appropriate anything for 24. This was. I don't believe it's in there. That's my
Yeah, we
point.
did.
You already approved a budget.
so it's 150.
Yeah, 150. We're, again, the Board of Selectmen has to decide what we're gonna spend for this transaction. So,
But you'll come to us July or sometime June
correct.
for that.
Yeah.
On this, I'm not convinced, this is what we want to do. We want to bond $100,000 for this, or why wouldn't we just, again, if we want to replenish the fund after this transaction happens, we could assign 100,000 from our general fund.
Well, or when you guys close out all
Why-
the funds like we're gonna try to do for the police.
That's
cars.
another
I
thing.
mean,
Yeah,
there's
that's right.
places we can have a sense of
Why,
what wanted.
why don't you do some more research and decide in June
Okay,
rather than now?
all right.
Okay.
If you're okay with that.
Yes.
So we'll defer on this line item for tonight.
Great.
And
I would-
we support what you have to get, the step there. You got to go through them. Lots of steps,
Lot of
There's a
steps.
general sense of support for this.
Yeah.
And I-
Good food for
Private, public.
Yeah.
food for thought. It's good.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It took me 10 years to get up here to make.
No, no, no. Thank you.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you. And thanks for all your
Well
volunteer
prepared.
time. My goodness.
Thank you.
Okay. On to the ISF. So on your and it's on the tablets, right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, great.
The bond resolution, but we're not going to act upon that.
Not tonight.
Not tonight.
Okay, so just as a reminder, there are two internal services funds we're going to talk about tonight. The town has one for town health, and that has a balance of $1.75 million, right? That's what we estimate 2023 to be
Yes.
this year, $1.75 million. That's for the town health only, not Board of Ed, unrelated to Board of Ed, just the town. I think we're I'm going to suggest or recommend that that's an absurdly high amount of money. And we might want to think about getting that balanced down. I'm going to propose $750,000 and take $1 million out of that fund and put it in the general fund. Step one versus another step. So I'm just want to lay it out for you, then we can discuss it. Okay, so that has 1.75 million. If you saw any of Ann's analysis, most plans have between 92 and 107%, so plus or minus 8%. Right?
Yes.
Of something, some kind of fund balance in there to act as a cushion. Okay, and the town's health expense amount is 10 million?
No, the town, oh, the budget or
The budget health expense that this fund supports?
6.4?
Okay, so 10% of that, 10, not 8, would be 600,000. We have 1.75 million. So you get the point. I mean, we're overfunded in that reserve, in my opinion. That's that. The reason to leave 750 in there, so that would be 11-12%, and to keep them and to take $1 million and put it in the general fund, is I think we're going to want it / need it to help pay down the mill rate next month. As we tick through all these things, when we get to the mill rate discussion. The second ISF, of course,
Just to be clear, so the current ISF, that would be within the general fund, but assigned, right? That's what, it's an assigned.
Not on the town side,
Pardon me?
not on the town side. The
Okay.
town side has a standalone fund all by itself where the money that's in that fund, that's it. There's no additional reserve in the general fund.
Okay, so this is a separate fund,
Yes,
which
So
would
it's tr-
roll up to part of our cash that Bob and everybody invests, right? Yeah, okay. So it's separate from the general fund.
yes.
Got it.
so we could, if we took $1 million and take it out of this fund, put it in the general fund, we incrementally add $1 million. That this is important because we've got to think about how high we're running that before we think about how low we want to take it.
Yeah.
Okay. Second,
And we would be leaving an 8% cushion.
12.
I'm sorry.
Well, if it's 750 on 6 million,
Okay.
Well,
it's
we'd be reducing a 30% cushion.
Yeah, okay, so which is appropriate. Okay.
exactly
Mhm.
right. Everybody clear on the town one?
Yeah.
Okay. Board of Ed. So there are two components to the Board of Ed. The projection is that the town has $1.8 million in the Board of Ed ISF, and the Board of Ed has 1.2 million. Is that right?
That's what their 40% should be. It's estimated it'll be about 1.5 at the end of the year.
The total?
So the total in the fund, the standalone fund, it's estimated to be about 1.5.
Okay.
Their corridor is 1.2.
Yep.
And the town side is 1.8. So they've 3 altogether between the town and the ISF fund.
Only,
I got you. So we're overfunded on the 1.2, it's supposed to be 1.2, it's 1.5?
their
Did I
40,
misunderstand that?
their
No?
40% is in their ISF fund as well. There's one fund for the Board of Ed and they have two components. The corridor is also in there,
The corridor plus,
plus
Yeah.
the corridor's in there.
Let's be clear. I'm not clear.
confused.
I want to make sure I understand I asked how much is in the town portion of the Board of Ed ISF, and it's 1.8 million assigned to the Board of Ed.
in
From
our
the
fund
town.
balance. Yes.
Okay, and on the Board of Ed side, they have 1.2 million. That's how much they're supposed to have,
Exactly.
and you think it's 1.5 or
That's
projected to
what
be
right now it's
1.5.
Okay, so that's their 40% match. Ours is the 60%.
That's right.
Of the quarter.
Yes.
20% quarter.
And
Okay.
they're a little over on the 1.2. They have a little bit more.
And they need to
It's okay.
keep some more in there.
I'm
if
okay
they
with that.
are.
I just
Yeah.
want, more is fine.
Are they not?
I'm proposing we don't touch theirs, the 1.2 stays or the 1.5, whatever that is. And that the 1.8 on the town side, we get out, we take all of it. We don't need it. And again, we basically eliminate our portion. We eliminate our agreement, eliminate our portion of
it's not an agreement, it's a policy.
it's a policy. Thank you.
Town
It is a
policy.
policy. It's our policy. It's a town policy. We can do anything we want with that policy, just to make sure that it's clear. But I think
When
as
you're
we said
talking
to
about
our
at this point, leaving the Board of Ed,
1.2,
ISF fund alone.
right,
leave it alone.
for this. and- okay,
Exactly.
right.
Doesn't change our commitment to
we're paying all their healthcare benefits. It doesn't matter. Again, it's just another shocking, large shock.
So what we're
absorber.
saying is the portion of the general fund that is currently assigned of 1
Mhm.
would no longer be assigned. It would be moved to the
That's
unassigned.
exactly
portion.
right. That's exactly
it.
right.
Just
And
making
we think it's about 1.8 million. Is that right, Josh?
But we're still standing
1.7.
there. Should there be a
0.744.
Yeah,
calamity?
yeah,
Yeah,
sure,
we're
of course.
self-employed. We pay the
I
bills.
just have to say that every time.
No,
because
no, you do. You're right.
Board of Ed
Can I
gets
just
rid of
clarify
it.
one thing?
Yeah.
Because I want to be sure about this. The Board of Ed's ISF fund has their reserve
Mhm.
at 1.8.
No, that's the town side. That's the
1.2 is
60%.
Okay, so what is theirs again?
1.2.
1.5.
It's three.
1.2.
There's
1.2.
3 million in there.
The
That's
40,
thing to
the
remember.
40% corridor, is that in the ISF fund or is it in the assigned portion on our assigned?
The 40% is in the internal service. funds,
In the
ISS.
fund?
Yeah.
That's my point.
So we have a decision to make. I think we want to keep, my interpretation of all the input you've given us is keep the funds open. Because they act as a vehicle for, for passing expenses through and all the rest of it.
Right.
They'll
and we
both
have
continue to have a balance for contingency, 750 for the town fund. Not to be confused with the town side of the Board of Ed fund. And then 1.2 million of the, whatever the Board of Ed's balance is, that's theirs. And that stays in the fund. And those, they stay. I think your plan on live with that for a year or two and see, maybe you want to combine them into one fund later or whatever it may be, but.
Yeah.
Okay,
Last
so I'm
question.
just giving you the overview. Anything else you want to add, or let in anything that I missed or misrepresented
But
or?
I'd also, not this year, but next year because of the strength of our OPEB trust. Because we do pay a lot for the retirees out of the general fund, both the Board of Ed and the town. So we're looking at these reserves, but these reserves contain retiree numbers in here. So I want to get a breakout of what those retiree numbers are and what their IBNR is at the end of the year breakout as well. Because if we're, and I think I said it last meeting, we're in that percentage where we can start using, we're actually going to use 300 of it in 24. We're
Right.
using 150 in this year,
Right.
300 next year. We want to get to the point that we can put the retirees in there. So 100% of their liability is covered. So no
Sure.
matter what their movement
smart.
is,
That's
it's
smart.
covered.
Well, that's
They-
why we fund it. It's for
Right,
that
we're not,
purpose.
we
Literally,
weren't
that's
there
right.
before, but I think it's at it's 19 million right now, which
Wow.
we had a savings of 300,000 for 24. That's why we can put money towards it. Then what that does is it shifts the IBNR and it shifts what we consider what we should have over to that fund.
Okay.
What's left is just the actives, which will take these, I would think take those numbers down considerably.
Yeah.
And the reserve level of it.
So let me ask you, so in terms of the ISF fund, and we've had this 40-60 split, which, and our side, we don't have it segregated. It's just part of the general. Is it segregated in the general fund? now?
It is
It's
assigned
not,
to the
okay.
general fund.
And theirs is a separate fund. Do we know, historically, have they tapped it? Because I know one of the concerns, if I'm understanding it correctly, is a timing concern on their part. That, if you have to tap it, the money's right there to tap. So first, right, do we know if we have 20% overage? That's why we're doing this quarter, right? And so of that 20%, they're keeping 40% of it on theirs, right? So do we know how much they've tapped it ever? Because they would tap theirs before they came to us, right?
Yes, yes.
So do we know what their history is? Because we want to make sure that they're never in a situation they feel like, shoot, I don't have the money and I got to do appropriation and can't get to it quick enough. And I know that's the concern.
Well,
Well,
they
the-
used to have 60-40. We had 40, they had 60.
No, I know.
We flipped that a couple of
I do
years ago
understand that.
and they've never gone through their portion.
Well, that's my
Ever
question.
get to ours. They,
So,
Yeah.
sorry, Kevin.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was what I was trying to
It's
get
not a
at.
pro rata, it's theirs first.
No,
It's a
they have to
water-
use
it's a
theirs first.
Waterfall. okay.
Yeah.
And it's the
And they've never
basis of
blown
what the
never
ISF
blown
fund
through.
is for. So there's no emergency per se. What'll happen is, as our claims come in through the ISF fund, if it goes into a negative balance, it's not a reflection on the Board of Ed or their budget. It goes into a negative balance and then this board, whoever would decide, we need to put in an appropriation in there.
And I think that's, if I understand correctly, where they get anxious is that, I gotta pay these bills and I'm worried about.
But they're not paying it. So their budget is set, say it's 12 million a year.
Mhm.
And we send over $1 million to the internal service fund monthly. So they have $12 million going over it. That's all their budget's going to pay, 12 million. The internal service fund could pay out 13 million. They do have a shortfall of $1 million. No reflection on the general fund. It's not their concern from their budgetary. They haven't violated any statute or
Mhm.
anything on that side. This is a side now to say, okay, we're under $1 million. This board would then either, if we didn't have a reserve, or the board would then allocate it, if that's the case.
So is there something in terms of getting people comfortable with not feeling there's not going to have money? And I could not be understand. Could it be something like if it got tapped a certain level, then we would automatically, you know, like replenish a fund, you know, so they're not in a position. And I just know I keep, and I.
How many times have we done that since you've been on the Board of Ed Finance?
Well, none.
Exactly.
Right. But so I'm just,
But
just
it's,
trying to-
it's remarkably similar to, you know, I don't want to go through 16 meetings when I
Right.
need the money.
right.
Well, no,
and
but
that's-
I-
I'm just trying to address that
Yeah.
concern so that.
But Ann's point
So
is
there.
important. How does that, there's a catastrophe of some kind. We just had one and nothing happened, by the way, and the fund was.
By the way, COVID, we had a couple of things, lung replacements, which cost,
Terrible.
you know,
We
$3
had
million.
That's the stop loss. Let's not forget.
Very bad
Yeah.
year last year.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
claims are normally
Yeah.
at about, say,
Yeah.
13 to 14 million gross.
That's right.
Their claims are well over 16 million last year,
Mhm.
but their stop loss kicked in.
COVID, because people didn't go to the doctor.
Oh, it
They
wasn't.
had some
Not
serious
false
stop
alarms.
loss.
That's
Their
not
stop
true.
loss for that year, for last year, was over $3 million.
Unrelated to COVID.
So it was a stop loss issue, and that's why their stop loss went up $500,000-600,000. So that to me was a pretty catastrophic year for them to
True,
go up that level,
true.
Right.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's coming down a little bit. They do have some stop loss just started kicking in 2 months ago. But they're not statutorily responsible for the internal service fund for if they're just pure statute. So long as they don't go over that 12 million, which there's no reason to, we just keep sending over that $1 million every month.
Healthcare expense, yeah.
It's what happens and that's the whole basis of why the internal service fund is there, that if something happens, it stops the fluctuation in the general fund.
Mhm.
And it's up to the board to say, okay, we want to put some money into it. The reason I was also thinking about combining funds, GFOA is our guidance, and they want us to try and start reducing the level of funds. We have a lot of funds,
Yes. we do.
individual funds. Combining them into one, but keeping them completely separate, which other towns have done.
Mhm.
You just code it separately and you can see it. We'll reduce a fund, plus keep money in there, although it's kept separate. We'll keep a bigger balance in there. So if anyone got nervous and say, we could take some from, we wouldn't touch the Board of Ed, we could take it from the town right away and put it in. So there's mechanisms to make them feel safe about it, but it never touches their general fund. It should never touch it.
But isn't another, I think, as I've sort of sat here and listened to this over the years, that another source of their concern is not necessarily, you know, the initial one, which is I'm responsible for this, and if it's mismanaged, I'm somehow going to be liable. And you might remember we explored, oh, we're going to write you a letter of credit. You know, we had all sorts of ideas. But the other source of the concern, as I get it, is coming through, is that we need to know that the medical bills of our participants and beneficiaries in these plans, that those bills are going to get paid, and that they don't have to come in the delays or questions about the process by which,
Right.
you know, we're going to be allocating or appropriating money in order to make sure that, you know, a shortfalls can be made. Now, I agree. History would tell us we've never been to that point where they've had to, you know, when they've blown through this. But if there's some way just through process that we could meet their concerns, or at least speak to those concerns.
Well, there'll still be a
Like
fund.
Springing, like almost like a springing replenishment or something,
Well, that's
which we might never do,
Well,
but not,
I'm just,
not everyone's gonna be reasonable. I'm sorry.
yeah.
So from a top level governmental side, when we file our annual report, the internal service fund does become, it's a governmental activity, even though it's separate as a propriety. So what we've set it up as now also to try and get investment on that money that's sitting there, I've set it up as a zero balance account. So there's no money kept
Got
in
it.
that account. So the claims will always be paid regardless, because the general fund is floating it.
Mhm.
Because
see.
we pulled the money back, it's invested in the money market because it is government money, it's the government side. So it's invested, and then as the claims come through, it's automatically paid. So there's never a fear that if it just say it ran out of, it was in that situation, we sent over 12, there's $13 million of claims, you'll have a P&L loss of $1 million, but your
Right.
cash will always.
Right.
pay
So
those
you'll
bills.
just catch up on the backside, but as a
Looking back
practical
and saying,
matter.
"We're in a deficit
you're
or going to
right.
be in a deficit, I need a budget.
I-
appropriation."
Honestly, I just think an explanation that is
Yeah.
no more complicated than that
Yeah.
would go a long way.
Yeah, that's
honestly.
perfect. And again, I mean, we've said it 100 times, I don't know, but it has to be said again. We own the healthcare expenses in this
good.
town.
Right.
It doesn't
Well,
matter. I
support.
mean, I'm glad you
Right.
picked 13 million for your budget. And if you spend 12, you underspend. And if you spend there's no way out of it. We
I agree.
owe those, we have an obligation. So I don't know why anybody would be concerned, but I think you're right. That can't hurt to have that spelled out, just as you just said, is exactly right. So that's the
Am
proposal.
I correct to assume that in the past couple of years, all of the anxiety and hand wringing that has been, that the Board of Ed has had around the ISF has all been unjustified?
Well, I think they believed wrongly in this particular instance that we were talking about taking the 1.2 million that's kind of, I'll call it on their side, their 40%. And we never intended that. That was just you saw it that night.
That
It
was
a
this year.
simple
That was
misunderstanding.
this year.
That was just now, but well, it was along those lines for 2 years. I mean, it was always a concern that we were after that. We were never.
So we were
after
just
that.
talking about different.
Yeah, it
pools
was
of
all
money.
about closed. We don't need to have this large of a contingency for what it is. And we don't need it. It's not necessary. It hasn't been tapped. We have the liability anyway. We have to fund the healthcare.
So they were unjustified in being concerned.
I want to say unjustified is a little strong. I would just say there was a misunderstanding
Yeah.
on it, and it was as simple as that. And when they realized we don't want to touch their 1.2, I think that helped.
In the access to, the cash flow, there's no appropriation component in that.
No, because the cash flow that's in there has been put in there from budgetarily that we've sent over and any activity based on the claims and everything else. So it's the net, the cash that's in there is the net activity of the fund, the operations of the fund. It's just cleared out every night.
Yeah, no, but I mean, in terms of, if for some reason, it was an awful year, right? Or worse than last year, right? That they got to point in there, let's say, May, and they've blown through their ISF.
plus.
Plus the ISF, plus the ISF. I'm just like, let's
Yeah, yeah.
catastrophic. It is from their perspective. Is there any, and and maybe I heard this wrong, but there's a worried about, to get the money, we have to get an appropriation approved by X, Y,
No,
Z.
it's
Is there-
automatically paid. So like. if-
That's, I think if that's explained, right?
Yeah.
Simple
Companies-
declaratory statement.
The insurance companies don't want to depend on us paying them. They pull it directly out of our accounts.
Right.
So Anthem and Cigna go in and pull that money out. So it's automatically coming out and we're automatically funding it at the end of the day through the banking mechanism. So if they God forbid, they ran out in March, we say they went over the budget in March, it's still getting funded. It just means the P&L is running at a loss until we decide to do a budget appropriation in 3 months, 6 months, however way we want to backfill that money.
So we'll be subject to an appropriation, but not an appropriation that would mess up the payment.
Correct.
No,
There
th-
it won't be
right?
would
like-
be a discussion,
Yeah.
but nobody's bills would be getting unpaid.
No, not one bill would be bounced or a problem because it's funded every day.
I remind you, remember the offsite we had at South School last fall?
Yeah.
And we asked Joe Sperling, does anyone else do it? Does any other of your
No,
clients
okay.
do this? And he said, no, you're the only one.
And I've been around 3 other
Something works.
ISFs.
We over-engineered it, let's be honest. Let's just call it. 7 years ago, we over-engineered a risk that didn't, I don't know whether it was from Obamacare and thought, that's all new, it's gonna cause, I have no idea what caused the concern back then.
I think it was because the whole healthcare,
Healthcare, some,
HSA was happening. And we were switching,
HSA, you weren't sure. Yeah,
yeah,
you're
and
right.
people were, the
Well,
And the
actually,
funding
roll
here.
off of the
They
PPO.
switched over to being self-insured about 12 years ago.
yeah.
right.
And they've had great experience.
Yeah.
That's right.
We only switched over 5 or 6 years ago, and we've had good experience. The first few years, we had a home run, and then we began to. But you have to think as an insurance company. You got to have appropriate reserves. They've always over reserved.
And the
have a-
reserve for us is a guideline from GFOA guidelines from your risk tolerance.
So say that what you said before again, 2 things. One, having the retiree claims paid through the trust. We just have to evaluate that every year. And as long as that trust continues to be well-funded, it
Mhm.
makes a lot of sense because that helps reduce. So that's a good
And
one.
it
But
would reduce, it would also reduce, it could switch. So right
Yeah.
now, we're funding all in. So it would reduce our budget, Board of Ed and town.
Yeah.
Because
Mhm.
it's now the trust picking up
Mhm.
that.
Right.
If it generated any sort of ADAC, it's an offset.
Correct.
So, you know, and as the value gets higher, that's ADAC is reduced.
The second point you made you said something about, yeah, this is it, the GFOA recommends to reduce funds.
Oh, yeah.
So you're talking about putting these two ISFs together, is that?
Yeah, putting it into one fund, but keeping it separate.
I understand that.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
so it'll be one ISF, there'd be a Board of Ed piece and a town piece.
Yeah.
And then what other funds are you thinking about
We
consolidating?
have, I'm hoping to bring it in front of you in June. I'm closing out all the capital that you saw with all the closed projects. I'm doing a resolution to, one, close out the projects, and two, reassign any bonding money that's extra. And we have one fund that's our main capital now. Everything goes through there. We have 6 other capital funds that are dormant, but they have activity. They have balances in them for a while. I'm cleaning them out, so that'll get those funds closed out. So we'll probably close about 6 or 7 funds this year and then see what other ones we can.
And then, and how much is the total balance of those 6 or 7 that you'll get done?
So it's probably net of 500,000.
No,
That has to go against,
it's a lot of quarters in the sofa.
they have to go against authorized but non-bonded.
Right,
Yeah.
But that's great.
Yeah, oh, no.
The police cars.
right.
Open space.
Space.
My gosh, we'll spend it.
So if I can just go back to the OPEB point. So, and I get your point that we can pay from the OPEB because we've had some good years and it's well-funded, et cetera, and all to the benefit of everyone. But am I also right in understanding that another thing you said was that the 12, 13, 14 million that they're budgeting every year includes retiree numbers? And in fact, so that's sort of a distortion that can be removed from the
That's- so
analysis.
we can get
It's
it
going to
over.
bring everything down in any.
Yes.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly.
Keep-
It brings
keep
down the
on their-
IBNR, brings down the claims.
Yeah. Right.
Keep-
You know,
But on their side, most of their employees are teachers certified that are on the state retiree plan. So they're gone once they retire.
Right.
some of them stay on. Some stay on because if they retire at 60, they can't get onto the state plan
Okay.
until 65.
Okay.
So you do see some of that,
For a
but
few years.
they're
And then the
custodians, they're,
non-teachers would
yeah,
also,
non-certified.
That teachers say just like all of ours.
like the.
But we moved our retirees off to a separate plan altogether.
The over 65s.
Over 65, yeah.
Okay, so keep it moving, I'd like to suggest that we do the following. We go to one fund, one ISF fund. We reassign the town money of approximately 2.8 million from the two funds. That's the 1.8 from the Board of Ed side, the 1 from the Board of Ed, a town side of the Board of Ed, and the 1 million from the town, 2.8 million. Reassign it to the general fund and retain the Board of Ed balance as is, whatever that is in that fund. I think it's about 1.3 million-ish or more or
1.5,
less.
I think you're saying.
1.5. right,
1.5,
estimate,
whatever it
estimate.
is. Yeah, that's fine. It's an estimate. We don't really know exactly what it is. The principle is what matters. The dollar amount is what it is. I don't know whether it's 1.4, 1.5, 1.3, whatever that is. That's the recommendation. Now, of the 2.8, just so you know, 1 million of it's coming from the town, so it doesn't even involve the Board of Ed, okay? We've already spent that money. That's going into the general fund to get reassigned to help pay down the mill rate as part of our exercise. I want to remind everybody, I think you know that. This 1.8 coming out of the town's BOE fund is new money. And I would recommend we discuss it in the mill rate, how much of it we might want to also add, depending on where we are. And again, this is really next month's conversation for sure, but it's good to get it in your minds in advance. Okay, that would be the recommendation.
Could I ask along these lines, just for Tom was saying, can this be communicated in a way with the Board of Ed to mitigate any concerns about the appropriation risk? Because what I'm hearing is that the cash flow, there's cash flow, it's just going to happen. Okay, you're gonna have we're going to pay these costs, it's going to come through. There'll have to be if it's a point where we spend more than the ISF is on their side, there will have to be some after the fact appropriation action, correct? That would need some approval process, but in terms of there should be no
disruption.
Just,
and
do I have this right? I mean,
Yeah.
right,
I mean,
and,
that's
but
right.
if that can be laid out and communicated, you know, the practical aspect of it, and then afterwards, like many things, we go back after we clean it up, and this is what we had to do.
By the way, it is exactly what we have today. The only difference is we have the ceiling to have the conversation is at 3 million and we're just making it at 1.5.
Right.
We're
And
taking
if it
our
was
1.8
zero-
off the table and just, because otherwise it's literally exactly the same thing would happen. What if they don't just blow through the 1.2? What if they blow through our 1.8? Same thing.
I'm just saying, you know,
It's
just
nothing changes.
Right now,
everybody's
if you
chill.
took that balance out right now
Yeah.
and brought their cash to zero, which it's still getting paid.
Nothing
Right.
changes.
Every
The
single-
fact the insurance company reaches into the account.
Yes.
is kind of
There you
very-
go.
so
Yeah,
and that-
yeah, I know that.
Maybe if you explain that.
They've
in-
done
They
that
know
for
that.
years.
They know that. They know that. They know that.
They have an impress, they're a little bit different because they have an impress fund, which is a very old mechanism. So trying to get that changed, because that's a very, very old mechanism, and then it convolutes the IBNR, kind of inflates it a little bit, where that we have to keep $400,000 on account. They want to raise it, the insurance company wants to raise it. So they go into that account first to pull it and then come to us. And they want more money in that account, which is dead money just hanging there, as opposed to, I want them to come directly into our account and
Yeah.
pull it out. So I'm trying to change that one.
Good.
That gives us back 400,000 if we do.
Good,
So-
good. Well,
You know, and in that communication that Amy just talked about, I think it's also important to say that this new approach completely complies with all statutes. Because that was a big concern of theirs. They felt that they would be like breaking some kind of law if, you know,
The general fund, all their regular funds, their general fund, their grants, all those other type of funds, they're governmental funds. The internal service fund is a proprietary fund for government activities. So it doesn't come under what they call the ESF, their annual report every year. That money, that fund doesn't come anywhere near their reporting. They're not responsible for it, and it's our fund.
remember, this is a town policy.
Yeah.
We don't need their permission. I don't mean to sound contentious. It's not contentious, but it's our policy. I just think we're sitting here with millions of dollars dead that we are absolutely misallocating as an executive board, finance board.
I agree with you.
That's all it is.
I agree.
The thing you're bringing up is a great point. I think it's a nuance that you have to go back maybe 2 cycles in this conversation. That was about cutting their budget on healthcare. That was about, we think you guessed too high. You estimated 15 million, doesn't make any sense. You've only spent 12. We're only going to budget 12. Their point was, I can't go into the school year with a budget of 12 and I really think I'm going to spend 15. And I said, I'll say we won't. I won't make anyone else complicit in this conversation. I said, well, you have $3 million sitting here in a fund. That's what it's for.
Right, but
And the point was, no, we need to have it budgeted. And they didn't consider that to be budgeted. So my point was, well, if you're never going to use it, and that's fine, why do we have it? It doesn't make any sense. Again, we're self-funded. We have the $20 million of contingency, having 21 doesn't change the calculus. So I think the point they were making fairly was, well, no, I need my 15 million budgeted because my estimates are 15 million. Peace. We agree. You know what? You're right. It's 15 million, whatever that estimate might be. And their estimates have been always good and always a little high. The bias is always to be a little, which is completely fine. We don't have a problem with that. Again, we don't need a contingency fund then, right? That's the whole point. They make the point.
yeah, I mean, it is.
That was an important distinction. They thought by us giving them less and telling them to use the reserve fund, that we weren't budgeting their needs and that could have put them in a bind financially. Got it. Guess you don't need the fund. That was the point.
But
So I
now
found-
we're budgeting exactly their needs, correct?
We take their budget. We don't,
We're taking the budget. That's great.
Yeah.
And just to,
I should say we take the estimate that they get from their consultants.
yeah,
that
who we
they
thought
put in
was
their
terrific.
budget.
Who
Yeah.
we thought was terrific,
That's
right?
always good. Yeah.
And then the kind of handshake agreement, we had the 40-60
Policy.
policy, we're just unilaterally going, we're not going to segregate our 60%.
We're gonna.
That's
not-
basically what we're saying.
We're not gonna sign our,
We're
we're
not
not,
going to segregate.
we're not gonna
Yeah.
sign, we're gonna sign $0 to that.
But you still have your 40.
That's theirs.
That's-
All right.
I'm sorry, you got a question, Tom?
No, I was just saying, on this, look, I support the positions that we've taken over time consistently, but I do think there is a bit of a communications problem as we're talking about here, because we keep speaking to where, how can I say, this? I don't think we're speaking to where they are. We're speaking to where we think they should be. And that unduly creates controversy where none of us think there should be any, frankly. And so I do think it, to the extent that when we're presenting them with these ideas or we're communicating them, that if we can speak to where their heads are at in that sense, it will go a long way for it to go down without creating unneeded and avoidable controversy, it seems to me.
Well, again, I think we need to not fund, change the
Correct.
policy.
I agree with that.
We need to communicate with them. Really, nothing's changed. We are on the hook for your health expenses like we always have been, and you know, we'll continue to pay them as we always have. We don't think it's a good use of stewards of the town's money and the taxpayers' money to have $1.8 million sitting there doing absolutely nothing when we could be using it for other
Right.
purposes. Doesn't change a single thing about whether we had 500,000 in there or 5 million in there. Nothing changes.
Different. We don't have that level of reserve, but the town's no different. We
Right.
still have our claims to pay, and if
Right.
we went over for some reason,
Yeah, right,
the
exactly.
board would be doing the same thing for the town side.
Yeah.
But we don't have any reserves on the general fund assigned. for
I
the
think
town.
Brian really got it last meeting, and I think we both now understood what the misunderstanding was.
Right.
And this is super clear. Their 1.2 stays.
The
and we're gonna pay
only
for it.
thing I'd say though, along that is I mean, and I know you're gonna keep them separate, but all of a sudden putting them together in one fund, is that gonna create more discomfort? I know that our town 750 or whatever we're keeping, and they're 1.5.
2 or 5. yeah.
I mean, I'm in favor of simplification, but do we really want to do that?
That-
all in one
that's-
step? I mean, that's probably gonna freak them out.
Maybe it's next year. You
Yeah,
know,
no, it's
this year we
next
just
next year,
leave them
yeah.
separate.
Just saying, I think it's
uh,
all semantics because the
No,
bills
no,
are
it's-
They
getting
have
taken by
access.
the insurance.
They have access to the town books. We don't have access to theirs, but they got access to those accounts. So they can see those accounts at any time they want to go in and pull it, and they can run a P&L at any time. And I've tracked both town and Board of Ed going back to 2011. Well, the town's not that far, but 2011 forward. So I know what everybody's activity has been for the past how many years, what their balances are, what they are, just to keep them, because I wanted
No,
to
I
get
agree,
it
but
consistency.
I'm
But
just thinking for comfort, maybe.
for comfort, it could be another.
Well, there's comfort both ways.
Right, well.
We're paying the bills. We ought to have visibility to the
Right,
activity.
and they have access to all of that.
Yeah. So there's comfort
matter
both
where
ways.
it
I
is.
mean, not less change is comfort, right? Just there's less, nothing really changes for them. Nothing's really changing anyway. The comfort the other way is that, you know, we're paying the bills. We're the ones that are funding all the taxpayers are doing all that. They don't, you know, that expense. So might be good to have it in one. They do have employees contributing too. So
Yes,
there's
exactly.
no reason. I wouldn't have a problem in a 2-step. Let's just this
Yeah,
year, keep
no,
them separate, 2
that's-
funds.
I-
Just because the
For level.
GFOA wants to have fewer funds doesn't mean we need to do this one this year.
Right, I'll work on the capital.
And we can work on it next year. And if, you know, and get them comfortable with that
I
if
think
that were the
that's a
case.
Better idea,
Do it 2 steps?
just from a goodwill.
Yeah,
standpoint.
that's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
Still get to where we're going.
Okay, so the proposal would be to change the policy and just reassign the town balances from both the town fund and the Board of Ed fund, the town's dollars into the general fund.
Yep.
Okay,
Unassigned, John.
okay. Okay, good. Thank you, Ann. Really good stuff.
Vote on that?
Well, I think what I'd like to
Policy?
do, if you guys are okay, is if we generally agree with that, we'll write it up as a policy change.
Let's write it up.
And get it clear and communicate it with them. Again, open, totally transparent, make sure all things are under, and do it in June. Just want to make sure there's a lot of work to get here.
Mhm.
You laughing at the June meeting? We're going till 2 in the morning. I know. I
June is
hear you.
getting
I know.
bad.
Okay, let's keep moving so we don't do it 2 months in a row. Okay. Sewer for use done. Josh. And we need time for Andrew because we do want an update. That. Okay, oh, that's readable. It's fine. It's good.
I'm working on it. I'm working.
Oh,
Which one-
You're
which one are we
good, you're
opening?
good.
You did it, Nick?
This is the spreadsheet.
Should be on your tablet
Yeah.
as
The
well.
date,
Mhm.
April
is.
30th.
Yep.
All right. So what you have in front of you are the year-to-date financials as of April 30th, which marks the 83% mark through the year. And I'll start with the revenue side. The overall revenues are at 100.36%. So as listed, it's 555,000 over what was budgeted for the year. Tax collections, the largest is at 101.2% or 1.75 million over what was budgeted. If we hit the
Yep. Go ahead. What's the, you read my mind. What's the number?
Right, so if we budget at the 98.5% collection rate. If we actually collect what we normally actually
Mhm.
collect, we cap at around 2.1,
2.1.
2.16
Okay,
million.
that's pretty
Um,
good.
And I'll get to that later, actually.
Are you worried about that?
No,
No, okay.
very
That's
not,
the
very
one.
not worried about that.
We're gonna beat that number? We're gonna beat 2.1?
Well, we can't, I mean, we can't beat it by that much, really. It's
Yeah. you
Other than
can't.
prior years.
kind of the cap.
Yeah.
It's just what it is.
Okay, so building permits are at 82.5%, which is 6%.
Sorry, are we tapped out on the tax collection from prior years?
Tapped out.
In other words, are we gonna get to the budget?
That's episodic.
We should be over budget for.
No, we're at 150%.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong line. I'm down a line, down. I was looking at the wrong one. You
Yeah.
had me at building.
We're doing pretty
permits.
good on that, on those,
Apologize.
actually.
Yes, very good. Okay.
Building permits are at 82.5%. It's up 6% from last month. Those I think come out at about 60,000, 50,000 every month. So we'll come close to it. We'll see what happens in June, which I think is a relatively heavier month, maybe. But it'll probably estimate be around 95% of what was budgeted, maybe. Down to conveyance fees, that's at 65% of what was budgeted, about 700,000 short.
Mm.
But we're kind of hitting our stride at that point of the year. We have 250,000 from last month to this month, so that is a big bump. And we kind of look to see something similar over the next May and June as
Okay.
well. So that'll bring it a little bit
Maybe
closer to
close.
what was budgeted.
So you're guessing maybe 1.9 versus 2?
Not gonna hit it.
I don't think
Right
so.
now, unless something big comes in. Can talk to Claudia if she's aware.
1.8, 1.9 versus 2? So a couple hundred short, okay.
Something like that, yeah.
Well, I don't want to give, if it's less, it's less. Just tell me what it is.
Definitely. 1.8
We-
would probably be.
Yeah, we think it's a safe bet to get to another 250,000 from here to the end. Maybe a little bit beyond that. But I think that's a conservative guess. And we'll have a better picture of that obviously in a month from
Right.
now. The BOE excess costs, we're obviously still waiting on that second half, so that'll come through in June.
So
for the
how much is
500,
that? That'll be that amount?
579, yep.
Okay, so that's good.
The other is now at 106%. Last month it was at about 80% or something. It took I think a 1 million or 1.5 million swing. So it was about 1 million up from last month. So the BOE ECS came in 100,000 over what was budgeted. Interest on investments is 400,000 over what was budgeted. Liens, fees, and investment on taxes is 150,000 over what was budgeted, the 250,000. Yeah, so those are obviously trending well. Are there any questions on revenue?
So your projection's about plus $1.5 million to plus 2 million?
So
Reading your,
So the projection is really probably around plus 1.5 million and maybe a little bit beyond that.
Okay.
Getting to 2 million would probably be a stretch.
okay.
So is
Um,
interest in the other, is that one?
Interest is in other, yeah.
Thanks.
Yep. And so on the expense side of things, the overall expense is at 78.72%. Which oddly enough, down to the 100% is what we were at last year at this point, which is a bit strange. And just as, not saying this would happen, but we came in 700,000 under last year in expenses, but expenses obviously are trending higher this year and it's would be a nice to have, but not something that we plan on having. It's really that we plan on coming in on budget. We've reached out to the department heads to tell them to get their POs in, so we have a better sense going into next month of where we'll end up. But expenses kind of keep coming through, July, August, so it's a little bit harder to pin down, at least right now. Any questions?
That's good.
So we'll be on budget, but not under. And we've, one of the reasons we've been able to keep taxes flat is we've been underspending every year, 3 or 4 years in a row.
I was going to say though, but do you look at the Board of Ed's financials and see that, they encumber most of their budget, right? So that.
Yeah,
is there-
of the 700 Josh was talking about, 333 was the Board of Ed.
Yeah.
So, we were 370 something. So they encumber.
But they were way underspent last year.
I don't have any other questions?
Nope, good. Okay, so. On to line item transfers.
No, you know what? While we have the budget, do you mind just jumping to the mill rate?
Sure.
Let's do that, and then we can go back to the line items and
It's the
then banking.
worksheet.
There is,
So
yeah.
you should have a separate worksheet
Yep.
of this.
Yep.
So tell us what you got here.
So in front of you, well, the top section is really just a breakdown of the budget in its various categories, town operating, health benefits, capital, and so on. Scrolling down to the Board of Ed, the different pension contributions. The assumed 4 million fund balance contribution and the information on the assumed mill rate, the taxable grand list and collection rate and so on. And all of those kind of calculate down into the bottom part of it, which is your multiple choice question of where you want to draw down. So on the left side is what the mill rate would be based on the second to right column, which is the fund balance contribution in $500,000 increments, starting around where we were budgeted at 400,000 being the grayed out version.
4 million.
4 million. Yep, definitely 4 million.
And that 4 million, let's just make sure we got this right. It has 1 million in it from, I mean, it's all from the general fund, but apples to apples, we've assumed 1 million coming out of the town ISF to be one of those 4 millions. So it's not actually drawing it, you know what I'm saying? We're putting it in and taking it out. So
No,
okay, what are we doing?
the 4 million.
Yeah.
Is above the 1 million. So the 1 million's already in the calculation.
Right,
Ah, Okay.
right.
Million's already in the calculation.
Okay,
The 1 million would
The 1
be,
million for the Board of Ed on our side of that Board of Ed is
okay.
in the calculation.
Okay, so yeah, that's right. It was we put it in the wrong way last time. It
Yeah.
was, yes, very
Oh, but
good.
You are correct in regard to we would be using our 60%, we're drawing down the fund balance to use that 1 million of the 60% corridor.
Well, no, so let's make sure we're clear.
Yeah,
So
you're backing up.
we're talking about taking $2.8 million of unused money sitting around out of the two funds. Ready? 1 million from the town.
Yep,
All right,
With
the
1
1 million
point-
from
I'll
the
do-
town's already in this, right?
so
it's already in the calculation.
Yeah, so the 1 million from the town ISF.
I know,
is
but I just
already-
want to, we have to be in agreement on what's going on here. So we have the 1 million, we have 1.75 million in the town's ISF. We're going to draw that down to $750,000, gives us $1 million. We put that into the general fund and we've used it.
It's in the
Okay.
calculation.
Okay, and now it's 4 more. This is 4 more.
Right.
Okay,
But-
so I'm,
go
bear
on,
with me.
sorry.
Then we have 1.8 sitting in our quarter of the Board of Ed.
Yes,
That is not in any of this.
it's in the calculation of revenues.
No,
$1
it
million.
can't be both, Dan. We only took $1 million out. You took $1 million out of the Board of Ed side of our quarter and we thought it was going to be revenue coming in. Instead, it was actually going to be unassigned $1 million to go into the general fund to get reassigned here. We can't, it's not we didn't do this twice. We only took 1 million out.
There's 2 million in revenues for transfers.
Well, only one can be from the ISF.
One is from the
What's
ISF.
the other million?
The other million is going to be a drawdown of the fund balance to get at the 1.8.
I don't think, I don't remember doing that.
so it's supposed to be a transfer from two different ISFs as revenue.
So you assumed the $1 million from the town ISF,
Is a transfer into the general
transfer
fund.
out of the assigned into the unassigned, and then now
no,
back
not-
into this.
So the town is from the separate fund being transferred into the general fund.
Yes.
It's not assigned or unassigned, it's just in a different fund.
Okay, all right.
And so
okay.
that's represented in the 8.9 town other revenue.
Okay.
So it's,
Okay, so you have taken 2 million already.
Right.
yes.
Okay,
So,
my bad then. I thought we only took 1.
so but I want to make sure that everyone understands through that the second million, the Board of Ed, what we call the Board of Ed million, that's not a transfer in because we're using our
Mhm.
unassigned fund balance
Yeah.
where we're going to put it in. It's a drawdown not through this, the mill rate mechanism. It's just a drawdown through the P and L at the end of the year. Because
Okay.
that million's never coming in. We're just gonna, that million loss will roll up to the fund balance to use it.
Okay.
Isn't it
It's an accounting
1.8?
mechanism,
Well, then there's the other 800,000 we haven't talked about. So you've used 2, not 2.8.
right? I'm
Okay,
not-
so we still have 800,000 to work with.
Yeah, no, we're, yeah.
Just so I'm clear, whatever amount of the 1.8, whether it's a million or we add the 800,000 on top or whatever, whether or not that actually is revenue coming in or it's something that you're going to catch up with at the end of the year, in any event, it reduces the amount to be raised by taxation, correct?
It's already in there to reduce it, yeah.
You're saying that 1 million he's referring to is in the 4 million that we're using.
I would
No,
say
no.
that,
In the
that the
revenue.
4 million is really a 5 million.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
we're gonna leave it at 4, but it's really a 5. You don't want to touch it to 5. You needed to leave it as 4.
You know, as we do this, I think we have to keep in mind, and I get that people are trying to rationalize savings accounts and not having to, but realize, so when we go to next year, okay, whatever, that's 2 million, that is going to be kind of a hole. Okay, so, you know, if, because we're using that 2 million to get us to a lower amount that we have to raise in taxes. So as you go forward, you know, and then if we draw down 4 from the general fund, you know, we're going to be basically using, you know, cash that we don't necessarily have next year. Just,
you know,
We always build up though.
They pay back
What
the
did
payers
we
back
draw
too.
down last year?
Well, that's the
From the
question. We don't know yet.
Budget- we budgeted for it and we draw down 2.
Looks like we budgeted
No, no,
4.
from the general fund. How much do we use from the general fund?
We used $1 million. We
That's it.
budgeted 5.5 and we used 1.1.
Was it 5.5 or 5.2?
Oh, okay.
5.2,
Yeah.
was it
So the
5.2?
net
Yeah.
number ended up being, but
2.6.
the headline number here is 4. Last year it was 5.5 is why
Yeah.
I'm trying to do apples to apples.
Yes.
Yes, but we use
Right.
1.
Yeah. for
I get
23
it,
was
but
5.
I'm saying our headline number is usually more,
Big.
more shocking.
then we actually use, yeah.
Yeah.
You mean, you could be higher.
It always,
Well, that's what I'm getting
Watch
to.
that.
I'm trying to get there, but
I
I
wanna steal your
want to
thunder,
also,
but
we're trying to, it's a
roughly.
multivariable equation because we also want to know what our balance is going to be because we don't want to be drawing that down below 18 million. I'm making a number up, in something that's in the zone. So
So the balances are on page 2.
Yeah.
If you have them there.
that's assuming the 4 million.
there's-
That is no,
That's
this is,
fiscal year
this is
22
the
ending.
end of year fiscal year 22.
Okay, 22.
22.
Right. So we take the starting for us to calculate
23?
23's availability is the 19 million.
Mhm.
If we get the 1.5 or even just to round it off to make it even at 2, you're going back up to 21.9
Right,
in your fund balance.
Yeah, that's right.
If that's what it is. So you have 21.9. If you draw down your 4, now that's what your unassigned is.
okay.
Got it.
So that good. Okay, so just following that, let's assume it's only 2 million between maybe spending a little bit less and then the extra revenues. We would have a surplus.
Wait, did I say that the wrong way?
I got a little confused on that one.
So we're not drawing down the 5, we're drawing down 3. So 2 is going to come out of the So 2 is going to come out of the drawdown of 5.5. We're
Mhm.
going to use 3.5
Got it.
to balance. That shifts back to the unassigned.
Uh-huh.
So now you're at 21.9. So let's just say 20,
Yeah.
22,
Okay,
and you're going to pull the 4 off.
W-
So that brings it to 18,
18, yeah.
but the 1.7, 1.8 here in the Board of Ed benefits,
Mhm.
that 1 million goes away.
Comes towards
Or
us.
the full 1.8.
well, again, we haven't had 8. You haven't used 1.8. We
Yeah,
just
so
used
the
1.
8 is left.
We still have 800,000 to
Right.
basically offset the 1.
Yes,
Okay, there you go. All right. Okay, so I got that. And then of the, whatever we assign, let's call it 4, we hope we only use 1 or 2 of it.
well, we know tax will come back.
We should
right? So
give ourselves that.
tax-
So,
yeah.
okay, so we're not in a danger zone there from a balance point of view, because we want to hover around 20, somewhere between 19 and 21. And that this math would suggest we would be there. The reason we can't do this tonight is we just don't know. We just have one too many variables to really nail down the best answer for how much we should use from the general fund.
And so the assigned that will kind of end up, so the assigned balance. So this is for fiscal year 20. Because we're switching. What are we taking out of assigned? The 1.8?
Well, it's 1.744, yeah.
Okay, so that'll go down by at least 1 million. So if we're looking 8.8.
But it goes into the unassigned. hang on.
I know, but I'm just looking at the side. I'm just looking at the side.
What else is in the assign? That is a big.
It's right
amount.
here. It's right here.
So it's compensated balances, heart and hypertension,
Yeah.
or small storm
Mhm.
damage, the 60%
And the
corridor
drawdown.
and the DOE encumbrances.
Okay, all right.
Okay, all right, all right. Okay. So I think for June, we'll have a better sense on revs, we'll have a better sense on expenses.
Build this out.
We'll build this out and come back and you have to now add the 1.8, not just 1 and 1, it's 1 and 1.8. So you have $800,000
To pull in here.
to pull in here. Now you've
Okay.
got to confirm that because we're assuming that's what the balance is from what you said that our balance
Yeah,
is,
I'll,
but it'll-
I'll break down.
if it's
everything
1.6, it's
based on budget.
1.6. If it's 1.9, I don't know. I mean, you said 1.7, so we need to know exactly what that is. So we may be able to, so back to Bob's point, instead of if you had $800,000, you maybe you don't use a 4, maybe you go to 4.5 or even to 5. And that's an increase of 3.78, not 4.4. So anyway, that's what we'll play with. Fair enough?
Yep.
Victor, anything?
No.
James?
And Todd's 100,000 for open space.
Yeah.
Can I
Oh,
see it
that's
on
right.
there?
100 times, 100 every year.
So it looks like we're gonna come in at around somewhere between 2% and 4% increase on the mill rate.
No, I think it's gonna be, I think the table's right. Even if you use, call it 4.5 to 5, you'll be around 3.7 to 4,
3.8 to 4.
3.8. You see that second
Yeah,
column on the left?
3.78.
Call it somewhere
Yeah.
between that or maybe between that and the gray line, I would guess is
Well
where we'll
below
come out.
CPI. That's
I was gonna say
And it's
same thing.
honestly, its expense was up 3.1. The mill rate's up more because the revenues are off. I mean, the revenues aren't where there's, when our budgeted revenues for next year aren't what they were because of conveyance and other areas are down. Unless Andrew's going to shock us, which he could. That's why he gets to go last. Okay, anything else on this?
It would have been a lot worse without all the interest earning. I mean, the whole-
Yes, exactly. That's right. That and then soaking up some of these excess funds that we don't need.
Yeah, and you gotta
It's gonna make
fix
a big
that
difference.
goofy $400,000 fund for the insurance, and they got a special whatever that you were talking
Oh,
about.
the impress, they call it. Yeah, that's old school. So I got a few.
Well, how can it be
Well,
$400,000 more
No,
expensive?
that's their
to
flow.
us?
That's how they make money too. So,
So, okay, that is close.
That's
So
close.
we're not getting any. interest on it.
well, that's why they do it.
Yeah, they hold on.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Okay, line item
They'll fight
transfers?
that pretty hard.
Fine.
Any,
There are,
it's not their money.
there are $90,653 worth of transfers that are just for review.
Okay.
Nothing really of note here.
Does anybody want to
Yeah.
have any questions on those? Amy, any
Hmm.
questions?
No.
On those?
And moving on, there is one transfer to approve.
Yep.
And this is a transfer of $23,975 from contingency to the Parks Department, Trails and Repair Maintenance. And this is for, I believe it's lead remediation at the Nature Center.
Oh, right.
Mm,
From the greenhouse they took down.
Okay. Motion to approve that transfer
So move.
of the 23,975. So move second. That was Victor that got that. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? Did we lose?
When you come
Colm
back up,
and
no, I just think-
Maria? Okay. Couldn't see if you voted for it. I assume you did.
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and that's that, and that's that. All right, Andrew. Anything else?
No,
And
Nope.
great job.
thank you.
Tag it back. There we go.
How do you get home so fast?
Anything-
All right.
That's for last, right?
So exactly. So the kind of an open item. It was really, after the fourth bank failed, we thought we should have Andrew come talk to us. And just to get a sense as to confirmation on all the great work you and Bob, I know Ann and everyone has worked on to really look hard at our opportunities to earn some money, but also obviously with what's going on in the market, just making sure we're safe and we've got the right mix and all that sort of thing. So maybe share with us the good news on the income, I think you have that probably handy and to the penny in your head. And then just everything else that's going on.
So not exactly to the penny, although I can do a bigger report on that. Really tonight, I figured.
Due in June, we got a wide open
We
calendar.
would talk more about the banking industry. But although actually probably Josh has it to the penny, or although I know it was.
Yeah, interest,
In
yeah,
that line item on
That's
interest
pretty
income.
unplugged.
interest income. Just let us know. Yeah, yeah.
It makes Todd feel good.
Keep going, Andrew. Well, I'm just, look, you know what? It was a great save. It really mattered.
The thing is, we every week or every other week, we're getting, bonds that mature, and they come back with interest. And so that number is constantly changing, as you know, and we're accruing interest daily in most of our accounts. But we are certainly on track to, I believe, more than double what was budgeted for this fiscal year.
Great job.
By end of.
Really, really good job.
So we're going to be over $1 million, I believe 500,000.
We cheer for those Fed
budgeted for
increases.
Right? Yeah.
22.
Ruins everybody.
Now with the Fed recently raising rates again, and I think the expectation is that as we enter maybe a shallow recession, rates are likely to stay high. They may come down slightly, but they're likely to stay at this elevated level for quite some time. I don't think we're going to see 0% interest rates. Certainly not end of this year and probably not end of 2024. You can't really forecast that far into the future. But I think the idea is I've layered us into a number of treasuries, some of which go out a year, some of which go out 6 months. Right before SVB failed in March, I was able to get a 6-month treasury at 5.2%. And then rates came down after that because of the flight to safety from the smaller regional banks. So just to quickly touch upon that, as you said, we've had 4 bank failures. We just had First Republic Bank fail last week. So that's the 4th one. The good news is we did have a little under 250,000 at SVB back in March as part of the IntraFi Bank network. And I think I've talked about that before, but just to refresh everyone's memory, essentially we access this IntraFi network of 2,000 banks around the country. They're all FDIC member banks. And how it works is you place money through what's called a relationship bank. And for us, that's currently what Bankwell. They're one of the 2,000 banks that participates in this network. You give them $10 million. They place it in increments under 250,000 at all these other network banks. So to ensure that everything is fully FDIC insured, so that in the event one of them fails, you recover your entire deposit back. Now, in the case of Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, the Fed came in and said, we're going to backstop all uninsured deposits as well. So it ended up not being an issue, but this is what we prepared for. And I believe we started this program, I want to say maybe 5 years ago, 2018, 2019 is when it was first introduced to me. And then I, talked to Kevin about it, talked to others here about it. We thought it was a good idea. So our guardrails worked, which is, I think, great news. And actually, First Republic Bank also had a deposit around 248,000. Again, they keep it under the 250 number. And back in mid-March, when we saw share prices of all these smaller, mid-sized banks start to collapse, I went through the list and looked at all the ones that were, in the news as potentially, likely to fail. And even though we weren't going to be in any issue of losing those deposits, because again, they were FDIC insured, I proactively said to Bankwell, hey, let's remove this sub account. Let's place it at a different bank so that we don't have to wait for, the Fed to come in and release our funds. Now with SVB, what happened was they closed it on a Friday. I was on the phone with IntraFi on Saturday. They had already received notice that on Monday, the Fed would be reopening the bank under, I believe, a slightly different name. And they were trying to sell off the different assets, but that our funds would be fully released and would be moved to another bank without us having to take any action. So again, it was very automated. We didn't have to do anything. And I think that's important. Now, Webster Bank is where we keep most of our cash that we collect from tax collections. And there was, conversation, I believe, over email with Todd and others on this committee about, are they at risk, right? Because they're in that category of mid-sized banks. The thing that we learned was really the deposit base for Webster is very different than the deposit base for the ones that failed. The ones that failed had, essentially crypto companies, other venture capital firms, where cash was leaving in droves. They had mostly uninsured deposits. Some, I think, Silicon Valley Bank's uninsured deposits were over 90% of their total deposits. Webster, over 50% of their deposits are FDIC insured. So you don't have these gigantic accounts well over the 250,000 mark that are, leaving en masse. And they have a very different client base. So we've been very comfortable with that. One thing I did research, and I think I would like the collective, guidance from this board on, is if we did want to fully collateralize our deposits that are above the 250 level at Webster, because again, we have most of our cash fully collateralized in a money market account that's earning, in excess of 4.1%. Then we also keep a little under 10 million overall in various checking accounts that are used to pay bills every week. Those accounts are only 10% collateralized because that's what the state of Connecticut has it set at. And I haven't found a bank yet that will collateralize checking accounts to 100%, like they will for money market accounts. So we have the option, if we want to get a letter of credit from the Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston through Webster for $10 million. It would be $12,500 a year. It would last, it's a year-long term and then you renew it. Essentially, it's like insurance. That letter of credit would fully collateralize all of our deposits at Webster. So if there is any concern, we do have an option and a strategy to fully collateralize that if we so choose. But again, it's for $12,500, would require, I believe, a special appropriation from the Board of Finance. But again, I feel comfortable with Webster's standing at this point. They have not seen the type of reaction of their depositors to date that some of these other banks have. But I think it's an important thing that we should talk about because safety is our primary objective. It's even more important than the investment income. So I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback on that. And also happy to answer other questions about this and other topics.
Let's do questions first or any feedback, and then we'll talk about the insurance idea.
So the putting aside the stuff that's in the money market, right? Which presumably that's the town's investment. It's not the bank's money, right? So that's not really an FDIC issue, right? So
it's fully collateralized.
Fully collateralized.
So there's
What you own.
Right,
pledged
exactly. It's your
securities.
investment. It's not theirs. But so
No, that's not correct.
No?
These are still deposits. They're collateralized with US Treasuries. So it's not like with UBS and Janie, we have CDs, we have
Right.
treasuries that we own.
Right.
But these are not securities that we own. It's a deposit that is collateralized.
Yeah.
They pledge US Treasuries to collateralize that deposit.
Oh, I
Right.
see.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
deposit
Yeah.
in a money market account, like a savings
They
account.
call it a money market account, but it's a deposit relationship.
Okay.
Right. It's not, yeah, that's not an investment
Right.
account.
And so how much does that cost in the sense of a reduced return as opposed to what someone's going to affirmatively charge you to get an LC to cover your
So we currently
exposure?
don't pay for,
If you're getting 4.1% as a deposit rate.
Right.
Treasurers right now can give you 4.6 or 4.7 if you own them directly. So that spread is what.
Right, and what they're saying is, but you can sit
That's for a
here in a
2-month
naked account
but-
and for 12,500, someone will come in and give you the comfort that you're otherwise getting because you're collateralized over here in a money market. So I'm just saying,
It's only 12.5 basis
true.
points, which is.
right, 12 and a half
in this
basis
world
points.
is
strikes me as
pretty cheap.
pretty,
insurance.
right?
Which
And we have a
reflects
bona
the
fide-
risk.
Bank expert.
Right.
So that's number one, is just trying to make sure that I
The
understand.
biggest worry in these things is if a bank goes under and we lose the moral hazard and they say, yes, you're
Okay.
collateralized, but the whole thing's a jump ball, which over that first weekend,
Yeah, I mean, I have
panic,
to,
but there was a real question.
I have
about
to say, I
whether they
agree.
were gonna actually
Right,
live up to that, because
'Cause-
people thought they had money market funds segregated at BlackRock, and over the weekend, there was the word
turns
was,
out
you
they-
don't have that.
they
You're gonna
didn't
stand
have
in
it.
line.
right.
That's what set off potentially a massive panic. Now,
Well, and I
they're
think-
not talking about it now because we don't want another.
Because I think that's one of the reasons why the Fed
Has to
came in
be.
and said, this won't be a depositor
Promise us that's not
situation.
gonna happen.
This is an equity investor situation, but we're going to take the depositors out. And so they insured everybody's deposits over the 250, right?
Right.
And so they removed it, but I agree with Bob that, you know, a lot of people who thought they were in a
Yeah.
comfortable position over the weekend were discovering they weren't.
Yeah.
And that's what was really feeding the panic.
Yeah.
But so, and is it the case that we simply can't, as a practical matter, run our pay the bills checking account function and stay under the $250,000 limit? That we need to, as a practical matter, have the 10 million sloshing around at any time because we're a reasonably large enterprise and there's no other way to do that. Is that a fair statement?
13 million a week, a
Yeah,
month.
that's what I'm saying. I'm
You know,
trying
spending,
to- yeah.
spending something like
Tax
that.
receipts come in, For
Yeah.
periods of time, you have.
Well, let's talk about that.
Nobody,
So-
no-
so
nobody
folks, we get paid-
collateralizes checking accounts.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah.
and we,
Right.
you know, you said the insurance company comes in every month and grabs $1 million to
Right.
pay the Board of
Yeah,
Ed's health
perfect.
benefits, right?
Good example.
So,
Yeah, so because we are paying 12, 13 million a month.
Yeah.
That means and we're making payments every week. So we're spending millions of dollars a week. So it is hard to keep all of our checking accounts under 250
Right.
for that reason. And the other thing is because we still do a number of check, we do, you know, ACH, but we also do check. And you're counting on those receivers of the check to go out and deposit those
Right.
checks. Sometimes it takes them a while. So you have to keep those funds available in the account
Understood. Yeah.
for the moment that they decide to cash the check,
Yeah, I
which
just-
could be a
Right.
month, sometimes 2 months later. I think we even have older ones than that where people haven't deposited the checks, right? So you have to keep those funds available in that account that you issue the check.
Right. I just
Obviously,
want,
and you can't issue
I
the
didn't
check
want
from the
people to
money market.
leave this discussion with the impression that somehow we were over the $250,000 limit because we couldn't figure out a better way to do it. I'm just
Right.
saying, it's
Right.
practical.
Right,
matter. This
practical
is-
matter, there's
Right.
no,
Right.
which is why I personally think the $10 million fine for 12.5 grand a year is.
Yeah,
Go
Tucker,
back to zero interest rates, we can.
can we vote on that tonight or do I have to notice that? I do?
what are you voting on?
Well, we're not, but the proposal is to spend $12,000 to insure 10 million and I think everyone here would say that's probably money well spent,
Well, the select.
but I can't move it.
The selectmen can do that. We just have to find the funds in another account. So you don't have to appropriate it.
Okay.
You can say you want to, if you want to vote that you recommend the selectmen. do
Oh,
that.
all
We
right,
can- we
I
can
like
do
that. Okay, good. Wasn't on the agenda, but we're not moving money, so we can do that. Okay. All right, well, any other but let's, I'd like to have that. I'll bring that up as a motion, but I did want to, any other questions for Andrew?
Yeah, I'm wondering how, so that it's like
Important.
$12,500 a year and it protects all 10 million, or is it put us somewhere else in the waterfall, or they got a business, they cut us a check for $10 million? Is it that straightforward?
Whatever
Yeah.
our balance is, it's not, you're not buying 10 of insurance. If we only have 5 there, your 5 is covered.
Right.
Yeah.
You could
Oh,
probably
we're not-
draw what your,
Oh,
yeah, just what your
That makes sense.
actual
Right.
damage is.
That
Yeah.
makes
12 and a half basis points, it's on the balance, it's not.
Yes.
That makes
Up to
sense.
10.
Well, it's on the full $10 million amount. The
Insurance.
cost,
Mhm.
that 12,500, you're buying 12,000, you're spending $12,500 for up to $10 million
Oh, okay.
reimbursed to
We
you
have-
in the
if a
event of a
bank
bank.
was under, we happen to have 3, we'd get 3 back.
Right. You
Right.
can only ever draw what you lost.
Exactly.
Oh,
So if you only have at that moment that the bank fails 7 million, then that's all you're getting back. You're still paying that 12,500
Oh, okay.
for.
Or
And again,
up
the
to
reason why
10.
I picked that number is, you know, from just looking at historical balance data, it doesn't look like we ever exceed that $10 million amount. We've been able to, you know, pool our cash in the fully collateralized money market account. And it's really, we're transferring it in periodically.
So what's our
Um,
kind of average balance? Like 5 million?
Uncollateralized.
Ann would know. Was there,
Yeah, and pooled cash.
Okay.
But it fluctuates dramatically.
Roll that out, I can control it to get those balances lower, so we look at it every day, so that we can keep them lower, so that we can keep more invested in the money market.
that's
Okay,
great.
so the cost is about 25 basis
Yeah.
points on our.
I mean, I could look into getting a slightly smaller if you,
Andrew, who is the letter of credit from?
so
Boston
Federal
Home
Home Loan Bank of Boston.
Directly from the,
They would, essentially Webster would help facilitate that. Where we would be purchasing it from them, so they issue it.
Hmm.
I believe Webster, and these are some of the details I'm trying to understand, because it's not very common for towns to do
No
this.
one else
So I
thinks
don't have a
ahead
lot of
like we
precedent
do.
to work with, but essentially, because a lot of banks, and sometimes instead of collateralizing like our money market account, which is 100% collateralized, instead of collateralizing it with just securities, they also go out and get letters of credit from the Federal Home Loan Bank as a portion of that collateral. So essentially, we're just going out and wanting to do it ourselves, but it would be through Webster. And would be allocated to our accounts at Webster. Now, one thing I am curious about though is, and I don't expect us to change banks in the immediate future, but if we were to switch to a different bank, would we be able to take that and bring it with us, or is it only there?
It's 12.
And we're essentially
It's 12
foregoing.
grand. It's not a big
Right.
deal.
Right, so,
And I wouldn't even try to get it down to 6 grand because we think it's going to be 3 million.
Right.
The day they go under will be the day that we actually had 10 million in there. So let's just not be, let's not be.
It would be important to understand whether or not we actually have drawing rights. In other words, Webster wouldn't draw for us.
right, well, I know that the collateral will be held in New Canaan in the town's name.
Yeah,
Yes.
you can see how that works. So if
Right.
somebody's a fronting bank or whatever, and
Right.
they're going to draw for you, but
Right.
this is somehow earmarked for your accounts. It all seems very indirect and fuzzy, but
Right.
that's
No,
a detail.
this is definitely more direct than that, where we're the ones who are getting that pledge.
Right.
The collateral's pledged to our account specifically, and it's due to us should, in the event of a bank
We,
failure.
and you and you and Andrew have got the process working now. Just in time to get $70 million in July. So that'll be the question. How can we make sure we really maximize that? We've got great rates and a ton of money coming in at the same time. So I would hope that we can really have a great month,
Well, and
July,
on that
August,
subject,
September.
That's why my personal feeling is we shouldn't keep everything at Webster, even in that 100% collateralized account that's collateralized with a letter of
Sure,
credit as well as
sure.
treasury
That's right.
securities.
That's right.
And other hold to maturity securities too, I think, potentially, right? And that's what brought SVB down. So I do think we should park some money in the IntraFi network, which then is fully FDIC.
That's your job,
insured,
but
right?
yeah.
So there will be still, once we get those
And you
inflows,
will ladder
placement.
some of the securities,
Like you did.
and
we will do because we're rolling
Right.
off at low rates and we're gonna roll on it.
right.
higher
And
rates
and so
that.
right now, through the end of the year, we just initiated a transfer to pull a bunch of the money from Bankwell right now that's in the IntraFi program to cover our expenses through the end of the fiscal year, because we're expecting, we have that balloon payment for the Board of Education at the start of the summer for the teachers. That was a contractual change that went in a few years ago. And because instead I've been able to park a lot of money in treasuries that are, earning 4.6. I did a one for 3 months at 4.95. So I'm getting better rates on the
Buy some of the
treasuries.
Ones that are gonna default
whereas-
soon, and we'll be, but we're not talking about
I
that.
bet you there's a market in these letters of credit. JP Morgan would probably do it at 10 basis points and Berkshire Hathaway would do it at 8 basis points. So I bet you.
Actually, I asked JP
I
Morgan,
bet you
they,
there's
they,
market
they
interest.
don't, that they wouldn't let me go out and do it. I actually wanted, because we have capital project funds over there, and those were only 10% collateralized. They had been under a consent order up until, I think, November of 2022, where they were required to keep it at 100% collateralization. And then it dropped down to 10 when the consent order was lifted.
Yeah.
And I went to them and said, well, what can we do to get it back at 100? They're like, we're not willing to change it. So yeah, so at least, it looks like we have this option. I feel, it's a good idea to take it. And then with respect to the collections, and that's the idea, is right now we're trying to spend down the money that's earning the least yield, right? And
Sure.
keep money earning,
Good.
that's earning higher yields intact in these treasuries. We have, a bunch of treasuries actually coming due in July. So unfortunately, some of that investment income won't get recognized for fiscal 22 because it won't hit our books until July. But again, we're going to have a lot of money coming in from tax collections, so we'll be able to go back out and reinvest and layer this.
Okay, unless there's anything else, I'd like to suggest or propose a motion where we recommend that the selectmen evaluate and approve $12,000 insurance policy,
$12,500.
$12,500 insurance policy to insure $10 million.
It's not really an insurance policy. It's like an
A
insurance.
letter of credit.
Letter.
Letter of credit, I
Yeah,
apologize.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sure. I'd move.
okay, motion.
That's right for
Bob-
sale too.
Bob's moved it. I got a second.
Second.
Second, Maria, all in
Perfect.
favor?
I-
I oppose none. Good, got it. That's actually better. Do it that way.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Terrific job.
Thank
Andrew
you.
and Andrew, really, really great. Bob, thanks for your guidance and leadership and
Andrew's
input.
doing a Great
Yep,
job. as-
great job. It-
they're-
You can
they're
feel it.
dream team.
Great job.
I can't get. on
Okay,
Teams, so-
anything else? Otherwise, we'll call it a wrap. All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Tom, second. Colm, all righty, all in favor? Aye, opposed, none. Thank you all. Good meeting. Remember, June, we start at 6. I'm not kidding. We have a WPCA meeting. We're gonna have a hearing. We gotta do the sewer fee.
July, oh,
June.
upcoming